If you're on a remote, just make sure to mute yourself. Everyone's got a nameplate, considering I haven't been here for 2 weeks. Brian knows everyone, but I don't know anyone but Heather. And I helped one person today remotely, but the video wasn't working, so I don't know who that was. Who was that? Yesterday. Yes, okay. Yeah. Cool. So I have the Trello board. I'll slack it out. Boink. So now Brian was using the Trello board, and this is a Trello board I've been using last couple of classes. And just add the cards that are for that particular day. There's going to be a few more pieces of information. I'll go through it, like added a card on final project material. So everyone has ideas about final projects, like scrolling, animations, single page apps, responsive. So I just try to collect some of those things. Maybe we get to do them in class, maybe we don't. So much material to cover. I can't cover everything, and you'll see that there is really so much material to cover. You're going to wish I went deeper into this thing, but if I went into that, then we would never get to the other thing, okay? So if there are things that you wanted to kind of cover more in depth, just Slack me at any point in time. Leave it in the exit ticket feedbacks. I do read the exit ticket feedback every night after class. I even compile notes. We're going to review some of that material. So today what we'll be doing is discuss the relaxer homework. I did look at some of the submissions, and some of them were like, boom, did it all, and then some were kind of stuck on just the top portion of it. I'm not going to build it out. I'm not going to go into great detail. I just kind of want to open it up for discussion. We'll post a solution for it so that you'll see it. But what I see with classes like this is that people come in with all sorts of levels. It is an entry-level class, right? So this is like, I expect that all you did was -1. That's all that you did, and you come in with that level of expertise, you can call it that. And from that, we build on it. If you came in with more, great, run with it. And that's what I see. What I usually see with the press release and relaxer are those people that are like, have that additional skill set, and they kind of run with it. So there's always going to be more material for you to do as part of the homework, and I don't want you to ever be like, oh my God, I didn't get all relaxer, I only got the top part. That's fine. Get what you can get. And you'll always have time to kind of go back as you learn new stuff, go back, reapply, whatever it is that you learn. There's no like, homework wasn't done on this day, that's it. There's none of that. You won't get feedback afterwards, or if you submit late homework, you're just not going to get the feedback. So if you do submit it, you'll get some feedback. You know, if it's a great job, and what I saw in someone was just like, great job. Like, I'm not even sure I could say what needs to be improved without like thoroughly looking through the code. Usually it's helping people. So we'll just do a quick relaxer. I'll show you some solutions from this class, from previous classes, just so you get the idea. Like, this is something you can build, and you will ultimately be able to build. Then we're going to build out I don't know, I was intrigued by the mars.nasa.gov site. One of my students from the day class, so I also teach the software immersive program. So you really delve into front end and back end. And they wanted to build out the mars.gov site. And when they showed it to me, I was like, man, that's really cool. I want to build that out. And with these skills, you can build out anything. So over time, I was just like, through class, I'm like, hey, let's just build this thing out. And we add a little bit, we do a little bit. Ultimately, we have something that will look like this. Let me see. Let me get it up here. Is it this? Let's see if this is the responsive one. Is it? Yeah. So ultimately, my goal, at least last class, was to build something like that. Like, this is part of the Mars site, and we just added some interactivity to create single-page app. And that's the idea, was to build this, put a background image, anchor this thing down here, anchor the nav up there, put this little thing over here, to emulate what would be the mars.nasa.gov site. Something similar to that. If you flip through the pictures, this box moves from side to side at times. Pretty much there, but they change the pictures all the time. Sometimes the box is over there. We never got around to doing these, but once again, it wasn't about building it, wasn't about sliding it. I chose to just make it appear single page app design. So this is just something that we built out in class along the way. As we hit JavaScript, this requires JavaScript, so we got to click on things. Here's our navigation. I have one with the logo. So just want to show you that that's where we started, with nothing, and then we build on it. And today is the process of like starting with nothing, and with the nothing that we have, but a couple of pieces of HTML, right, or just text, no, it's HTML, we're gonna kind of reinforce the HTML elements that you've learned, right? You've learned paragraphs, H1s, divs and spans, right? Cover divs and spans. I know there was an exercise to do the spans with the quotes, right? For that one quote, you had to target them using spans. So we'll kind of review the elements, and then you also did the box model. And the box model represents height, width, padding, and margin, right? Those are the four things that the box model is really kind of focused in on. You know, we're gonna have height, width, we're gonna have padding, margin, and then border also, right? So these things make up the box model, and they're key to how you lay things out. And when do you use margin, and when do you use padding? Obviously, border is pretty self-explanatory. You put a border around something, but borders can be kind of unique. And then just setting heights and widths. And heights and widths as they pertain to very specific elements, like an inline element, which is something new that we're going to cover today. You did not cover inline elements yet. You've been playing around with block level elements for a while. You actually have been working with both of these. You just didn't know it. An H1, a paragraph, a div are all block level elements, and they have very specific properties. And inline elements also have specific properties, and those properties really relate to the heights and widths and margins and what you can assign on which one. So we're going to kind of cover that also as we build this little thing out. And then I'm also going to be using Emmet. I don't know if Brian used Emmet a lot in here. Is that like a new word? Emmet's a new word?
We introduced what it was, I think, briefly, but we didn't actually.
Oh, okay, yeah, I love using Emmet because I don't want to have to type out HTML elements. So Emmet is a tool that comes with CodePens, and I just use it as much as I can because otherwise I'll just fat finger everything. Cool, all right, so let me cover exit ticket feedback and then I'll go into it. So for exit ticket feedback, I do look at the feedback every class. I mean, I was kind of focused with my class during this time, the one that I was actively teaching, but I did look at the feedback here. And so just my own personal thing on feedback, I asked that everyone fill out the feedback at the end of class. That helps me, you know, how the class went, how you think it went, how I can adjust it for the next class. Like, to me, that's really important. If no one leaves feedback, and then at the end they're like, I really loved it, or I didn't love it, I'm like, but you never left feedback. How was I supposed to know your feelings on the class, right? I do adjust it. And provide details for what you chose, like your scores. Whatever your scores were, just say if it was a great class, say it was a great class. Wasn't a great class, I'm, you know, I'm a human being. I'm not gonna have like the best class every time, hit it out of the park. And there are times when I struggle, when we hit JavaScript and I push it too hard and people are like, I don't get it, slow down. And so it's not the best class. I feel it is because I gave you so much material, but you don't feel it is because I gave you too much material. So tell me that. I just kind of collected, put it into a Word doc. Some of the questions, I won't go over everything. Otherwise we'd just be here for like 15, 20 minutes going over feedback. But some of the questions that from the last class, from last week were, when should a div element be used? Now, based on last class, you learned what a div was. Anybody want to kind of reiterate what a div was or is used for?
To organize your website, basically.
Okay. So a div is used to organize, as is an H1, as is a paragraph, right? These elements are used for targeting specific content. That's what it's used for. And just think as a div really doesn't have any, it's a container. Let's just say that. I mean, in H1 is a container, right? I put in H1, I give content, and it becomes a container for whatever the content is. But a div is just more like a box. That's a div, okay? And the box is meant to contain content, right? It's meant to segment my site. So I can have a div there, I can have a div here, I can have two different containers that contain different content. This maybe this one's gonna have my H1 and some paragraph text. Maybe this will have an H2, some paragraph text, a span for whatever, a button, whatever it is. These things here are really just containers. And divs are used to organize your site based on information that is related to each other, right? Some of it is more of a broader relationship, like this could be a div also, right? This container contains everything about the website. This stuff is pertinent to the website, so that main div contains that. This is pertinent maybe to the header portion. Maybe this is another section on the page, right? So that's what a div is. We will get into where divs got broken into something called semantic HTML, where a new naming convention for elements was introduced in HTML version 5. Things like section, articles, aside, headers, and footers. Those kind of, nothing's taken the place of divs. Like divs are key, they're used everywhere, but it doesn't tell me what the purpose of the thing is. Like looking at a div, I'm like, all right, well, what is it doing on the page? I would have to look at the content to make that decision. Versus using a div and then adding a class like container, right? Now that div has purpose, it has meaning, okay? When you're writing your HTML, really consider writing your HTML for the next person who doesn't really understand HTML as much as you do. Or you're gonna ask for help. Write your HTML in a way that the person that's looking at it can be like, oh, this makes sense. So if you just start using whatever naming convention you want, box, I don't know, what the hell does that mean? Like, that's a class, you can call it whatever you want. I don't know what a box means in your mind. I know what a container means. I know what a wrapper means. We're gonna look into an article that kind of describes the difference between these two, but these are two naming conventions meant to organize content. And they both are classes added to divs, okay? So I think I really went into that. If there's anything left. When should you use a div to organize your content? And I don't know, it was an awesome answer, and I felt like I just ran with it. Can you style one element in a class differently than the other elements in a class? So from what I basically understand from that is like, if I give two elements the same class, can I still target them uniquely and assign different CSS? I mean, that's my interpretation of it. And yes, you can. Styles assigned to a class apply to everything that that class has been assigned to. Every element that has that gets those stylings, right? But I can also supersede those stylings by being very specific about targeting that element, okay? This is specific, right? But also preceding it like this, body div dot container is even more specific because I preceded it with another element. And so the path to something, the path or the target to the actual element weighs in on whether or not the CSS is applied or it's ignored, okay? Or it's overwritten, okay? Because it's all just a combination of all the CSS gets evaluated. If I didn't have this one, I grab it, I get a little from here, that one overrode this one, all right? So it is important. And we're gonna be writing, when we build the Mars website out, this is how we're gonna be writing it. I'm gonna really enforce what the difference is between having a space here and no space here, okay? So when you're looking at your CSS, you know that this thing here is a child of this. Okay, so as we write it, you'll know, and you'll know that this dot attached to the div means that it is a class assigned to div versus something like this, I'm just gonna put box, that has another element nested inside of a div with a class container. Like these spaces here mean something. And we're going to convey that by writing it out, okay? And the repetition will be important, okay? Lastly, what's the most efficient way to start coding a page? I'm going to assume like doing relaxer, probably that was the biggest thing, right? Where do I start? There's all this stuff, right? Layout, right? Organize your content. There's whiteboards here. You got pen and paper. Write stuff on a piece of paper and be like, I want a box here, and I see this is box. When you are writing out your contents, always put boxes around everything. Like if we start with this, the first thing that I probably want to do is do something like this. Border 1 pixel solid. Now I know where everything is. I know what the thing that contains it, how far it stretches, right? I know everything here, and so when I'm starting to move things and add things, it makes sense to me because I see the thing, because without this, it's just kind of like magic behind the scenes, like where does it end? Where does it begin? What's it nested in? I don't know. And now we kind of pull the covers back and we're like, oh, that's cool, this thing right here. That looks like it contains this element. That's as far as it stretches. But what's causing the space between these things, right? Where did that come from? Right? Where's this coming from? And where's this space coming from? And why is there no space around this thing? This helps you visualize it, okay? So we're gonna be doing that for a while, visualizing it. Once we get past that, you won't be doing it. But I always say layout, and I'll just even put here a border around everything. Just so that until you get used to it, okay? Those are the questions. I didn't see any more other questions that I wanted to kind of bring up. If I missed your question, reach out to me once again. I'm always available. Sure.
Question mark, when you add the border on the asterisk, it takes it to every element, because I did that.
Yeah.
I went and I wrote every element out.
It's the long way. That'll work. But yeah, the star symbol is the wild card. And as we, for every possible thing, there is some things where even the element itself overrides the star. It just says, I have this unique thing assigned to me that you can't, like an anchor tag has a color that cannot be overridden by doing it on the wild card. But everything else will be, and we'll see that in action when we actually do it. And then just some feedback. Brian, I'm gonna miss Brian. He's a fun guy, I like Brian. Me and him were, I think, TAs for a course like this like 3 years ago or something. He had to remind me, I was like, really? I didn't remember. Thanks for great insights, Brian. I'm having fun, feeling excited to get to learn JavaScript. Not Brian related, but JavaScript. It's really, really cool. Once we get into it, you'll see just how cool it is, right? Like that's just cool. The fact that you can just do that with JavaScript, make something appear, make something disappear, is pretty cool. Got plenty of other examples too. All right, that's the feedback. That's it. We'll jump into this because I really get excited about wanting to build that out. The other thing is office hours. You know, open up office hours. Don't see a lot of people signing up for office hours. Now, maybe this time it doesn't work. I teach a remote class and I teach it from home, and the class doesn't end till like 5. It doesn't until 6. I tell them I have to leave at like 5 to jump on a 5:20 train to get here. So I can't always guarantee I'm gonna get here on time. I go to Penn, I come up from Penn. So I can't always guarantee. So I did set this time aside in the mornings, and it's a remote session. So before you're going to work, or if you're at work, if those times don't work, sometimes during the day, on lunch. Do you have a question?
Will you just call on Slack, or how does it work?
Oh, no, it's Zoom.
Oh, Zoom.
So the same thing that we're doing, if I see that it's booked, if you book a time, please send me a calendar invite also, because there's times in the morning I forget to look at my thing, and if I look at my calendar and I don't see anything there, I'm like, all right, nobody booked time with me, and then you might have a slot here, but that's not going to be my fault. If there's no calendar invite, it's not going to be my fault that we didn't meet. So if those times don't work, I do have some time like during lunchtime when they're on lunch. If I don't have anything to do and you reach out and you want some help, like I helped Michelle the other day, You reached out, said, can you help? And I was like, yeah, I have some time. Shoot me the thing. And like we did a Zoom session right there. So I'm always willing to help if I have the time. Okay? So feel free to lock in time. But if it doesn't work, by all means, reach out to me. All right. I feel like that was a lot for 20 minutes. Relaxer. What was the general feeling on relaxer? Anyone can jump in. Julio, you can jump in. Nothing? All right.
I had issues with the imaging.
Okay.
Stacking, basically, like where to place demo image location.
Okay.
Understanding how to organize that so it's not way represented on the site.
Okay. So I'm going to capture some notes, and then when we build out our thing, I'll use this. So we're talking about stacking. Stacking images or stacking elements?
The background images were that little shoot.
Okay. So we're talking background image, right?
Yeah.
Image. Okay. There was a few, right? There was the relaxer top one. There was the one with the ocean waves, right?
Similar to that, I also had gaps.
Yes, the gaps.
That I could get rid of.
Gaps. That always happens with relaxer. It's always like you stack them and you're like, well, where'd this white line come from? Out of nowhere, there's this white space between two elements that look like.
I would try to put in a color, and then there would be spaces between the boxes.
Yeah. We'll get into it. Usually that's something to do with margin, and you don't see it happening there. These elements have needed margin to them, like an H1 has margin. And you saw that earlier when I put the boxes around. I was like, why does this thing look like it has space? Because there's margin there. Did you have a?
Yeah, I had a whole conversation with my developers this morning about centering elements.
Sure.
CSS. They're saying that they also think it's tricky.
Centering. I love developers thinking centering is tricky. Okay. All right.
One of the things that we struggle with is I think the first design and the layout was really right. Like that's what I had an issue with. I think the first design was nice because you got to trust your instincts and how to lay it out.
Sure.
And I had been tripping up on like, oh, it's actually this fast and things totally different than what I thought, but I didn't roll enough to get
Okay.
So there's, I don't know, I would recommend it's different. So I hope we go more about warrior trick and like the layout.
Yeah. No, this is going to be key. Once we cover this, you'll see and be able to, my goal is to kind of have you always working in developer tools. So if you're ever like, why is this thing not working? I'm going to be like, well, did you look at developer tools? And your answer is going to be yes, and I still can't understand it. Because if your answer is no, then I'm going to say go to developer tools. Like inspect it, and I guarantee you maybe 75% of the time, you'll see where the thing is happening, and you'll be able to figure out the answer. Huh?
I had a problem centering the button. My fonts ran away and like just went somewhere else on the page.
Okay. I like that. They just went away. They went someplace else.
They just like, I'm not.
Okay. You could have used anything too, right? I mean, a button, any element. I could take this H1 and, it's this big bold element, and I could make it look like a button. I could make it look like paragraph text. I can make it look like a circle. And you would look at it and think, wow, somebody drew a circle on the page, but it's an H1 that has no content, but just a circle, okay? You can do whatever you want with some of these elements. Let me see. This is a D3 thing. I'm just bringing up kind of circles, but like I take a span and I smack circles. I turn them into circles. I make this look like a specific kind of design, right? This is a UL with LIs, and I just take nested spans and I give them border radius and I turn them into a circle. And then you have circles, literal circles that are being drawn here in something that's called an SVG. This is stuff I do with D3. It's a data visualization tool. It's kind of what I work with. So these are literal circles, very specific. That's what they are. They're a circle element, but they only work within this box that is an SVG. If you try to draw a circle outside of an SVG, it doesn't get rendered. So these are just things that you kind of pick up and you learn over time. Right, so I'm going to go over those elements in Relaxer. I'm going to show some submissions from my previous class and some from this class. And you'll see there's the same pattern. Student just decided to change the background image. That's fine. I don't really care. You want to change the background image? That's fine too. But it's the same thing, right? Benefits looks pretty clean cut. Relaxer. This was a block quote. They centered that. Here's the sign up. This looks like it could be maybe a little bit more centered, right? Kind of looks a little bit to the left. It's one, right? Let me see, Anna's. This is a class that just ended. They just completed last week. And so these were their projects, right? Same thing. It's almost identical, except now these are more to the right, right? So these little unique things, but for the most part, they got the general styling. And if I looked at it, I might see some differences. Like I haven't, looked at these things in depth since they were submitted. And then Diana, yes, this was Diana's submission, right? Looks just like the ones that we saw, right? Same thing. Here, you got them centered. Awesome, you figured it out. It is hard, yes, it is. And Darren, yes, right there. Same thing, okay? You change the color here, made it look nice. You put a little space between them. Once again, you can look at these and investigate them. The idea is that you compare it to what you have and you learn how to build it that way, right? If anything, if you do have questions about yours, reach out to me or Heather and be like, hey, could you have time this week? I'd love to take a look at this and this and this. I can't go through everyone's design in one class. Otherwise, there would be no class, just relaxing, okay? So we'll cover those things as we do our Mars site, okay? So ultimately, what I'm looking to do is kind of build something similar to this, okay? Just a simple page. It's not going to be anything kind of like that. I mean, it's going to look like that a little bit. It's going to be more, we're going to ultimately look like, the live view here, is this. This is what we're aiming for today, because this is the image. I go to the site, and so this is what we're going to be building, okay? It contains background image, right? There. I don't have any centering, but we can easily apply centering to that text. There's going to be some layout choices that we have to make, using containers or wrappers or what kind of elements should these things natively be. Maybe we can produce the gaps also and see where those gaps occurred. You'll see the gaps later when we get to doing the navigation, because today is also about, you know what I left out here? We're going to be doing, when we do display inline, we're really going to be focusing this on navigation, building out a nav. So I'm just going to put that here. Build, nav. Okay, and we're going to be using inline elements and block level elements so you can see the different constructs that are being used for navigation. Let's take a look at some sites and we'll investigate. Cool? It's a lot. All right, so let me go here, select this out, and we can start building. Okay. There's the code pen. Now, when we do the code pens, this is how I like to code and have everyone kind of follow along with the coding, is you have the code pen, right? So this is your browser window here, this is Chrome, and you just opened up mine here. This is Joe's version. What I want you to do is take that version, copy the URL, open up a new tab, paste it, and then fork it. Okay, now it's going to be yours. So you're going to have two versions of this thing, my version and your version. There's a lot of people in there, and I can't walk around to every possible person that's having an issue with something. So when we do this, you take this, and when you have this, you're going to fork mine. You're going to click on the fork button. Now, I'll demo it. And so now you'll still have my version that I'm working on here. I will save it. All you have to do is refresh that tab, and you will have everything that I'm doing. So if you're like, mine doesn't look like Joe's, I don't know what I did wrong, go to Joe's, copy Joe's, paste it into yours, and you're right where you need to be. I'd love to help everyone out and like, hey, let's work through the problem, and maybe we will do that sometimes with a large class like this. it'd be really hard to be like, oh my God, Emma, you're having a problem, Diana's having a problem, Maria's having a problem, send me code pens, because then we never build the thing. I just troubleshoot. Once again, I kind of want to work through some of the troubleshooting so we can see how this is going to get done. All right? So I'll demonstrate. I have this, and if I was to copy, all right? If I opened up a new tab, I'm just going to move this tab next to that one. If I pasted it, I have two identical versions, right? They're both still Joe's. I mean, they're still going to be mine. But if I fork this now, you'll see the page refresh. Now it's a different copy. They're two different things. They're two different code pens. They look identical, but they are two different code pens. If I edit this and I save it, if I got rid of border here and I saved it, and I went here, right, did I save it? And I went here, and oh, you know what, border was never there in the first place. So let me just refresh this, so we don't see border here, but if I go here and I add border, and I save it, and I go here and I refresh, there's no border because they are two different, very unique code pens, okay? So this should be mine, that should be yours, and everything's gonna look like that when we're done. Awesome. Okay, good? So the first decision, I'm gonna take a look and see kind of what we have here. We do have some content. What I'm gonna do here is, I'm gonna get rid of everything. So the first thing that I want you to do is just kind of get rid of everything. We're gonna rebuild it all. And I'm gonna show you how to use Emmet to do it, okay? Whoop. So, let me just move this over here. So we shouldn't have anything, right? Everything is gone. I'm gonna save it. This is my version. I don't have anything here to work with, okay? So what we're going to do is use Emmet to start building it out, okay? So Emmet is the tool that we're gonna use in class, and in order to build out the HTML structure, which I know Brian went through with you last week, does anybody know the Emmet command to do that? Exclamation tab, awesome. That's our structure, right? In a code pen, this is really the body. You don't need all of the extra stuff. We include it because at some point in time, you're gonna have a file, and that file is going to be needed to be structured as an HTML document, and this is an official HTML structure. So we're gonna use that for several weeks until that becomes like ingrained, and then once it is, and we get to JavaScript, maybe we just add a couple of HTML elements in there, and that's it. We don't really have to stay focused on it. So, we're here. Now, we want to build out what's inside of this body, right? We need to build something here. So, I want to create a container. So, the structure that I want to build is this. I'm going to have a container and a header. Get rid of this. I'm going to draw what we're looking to do, and then we'll use Emmet to reinforce it. Okay. So I'm going to want some sort of container, right? So this container is going to have a class of container. Okay? I'm going to walk you through it. And inside of this container, I'm also going to have something else. I'm going to have a header inside the container. So I'm just going to do this. Okay? So if we wanted to start with just this structure, we wanted to use Emmet to build this out. Okay, this is how we could do it. I'm inside body. If I do dot container, okay, dot represents that this thing is going to be a class. If I do dot container and I want to nest something inside of the container, I do the greater than sign. Greater than sign, and then I do header. I'm going to zoom in a little bit because it looks like maybe that's just too much. If I hit tab now, it creates a div, a box to store our content with a class of container and a header nested within it. Okay? So the fact that we have the header. If I go back, so if I Command Z, I can go back in time and undo what I just did. right? And so I'm going to do that a lot because I want to capture that, comment it out so that we have it. But say I wanted to add a wrapper inside of that. How would you add a wrapper inside of the header? Come over here, and now I want to add another element inside of here. This thing here is going to be our wrapper. Okay? How do we add a wrapper to this? What do you think it is? Yeah, so we would just do a greater than sign.
So this layout of the container header wrapper, what is it about the Mars website that we're trying to get to in design that's motivating you to create these containers?
I'm using their site has a lot of stuff. If we were to investigate their site, there's a lot that we would have to consider if we really wanted to build it out the way they have it structured. They have so many things nested inside of so many other things for the purpose of responsive. I'm taking what I know about kind of layout and structure and applying it to at the most basic level to make sense of what I see. That's what I'm trying to do. And what we will see is that these things of containers and wrappers are used everywhere. And as we investigate websites, and I do it all the time, where I'll go to a website and we'll dev tools and look at something, you're going to see containers and wrappers used everywhere. And then the concept is like, well, what's one versus the other, right? And I have a little article that I'm going to show to kind of convey when we would choose to use the other, right? Because I did put container on the outside and wrapper on the inside. And I did that for a very specific reason, okay? So I'm going to go back here. Now I have wrapper, and if I hit tab, I have wrapper inside of header, right? Okay. What I like about Emmet is if you kind of understand the structure that you're looking for, right? If I understand what I want to do, then I can start to build this out. And that's why this is kind of important as you do this. Because inside of this now, I want to have another box inside of wrapper, and inside of wrapper, I want to have a class called info. And the fact that I see this, as I'm drawing it, I know I could create or use Emmet to just build the thing out really easily. Like, boom, it's done, and I have the structure. So visualizing it helps. Once again, you gotta have to understand putting things in containers and why are we doing this. So once again, if I go back and I say .info tab, I now have, oh, look at this. I didn't put the greater than sign. So it added a class. So you know what I'm gonna do? Just show you what happened is putting a second dot just gives this element a second class. So as you're doing your styling, you start designing it, you can be like, oh, I want this to have this and this to also have a class that I can assign someplace else like a button and do it. You can do that also. So I'm gonna go back here and do that. Once again, I'm gonna copy this and tab it, and I'm gonna put it here and comment it out so that you have it. When you go back to this, you can be like, hey, that's how we created it. And so now you can build out your HTML really fairly quickly without much. We could have even went further. I could have built out everything. I'm just kind of baby stepping it at this point in time. I'm gonna save it, bloop. Nothing really happened, right? I do see a couple of extra lines here. So there's more lines now because of what I have for the CSS, right? So in the CSS, we did add earlier this border to the wildcard. So everything is getting a 1 pixel border now. It's all. So there's just a lot of border upon border, right? But no real content as of yet. All right. So inside, so I'm gonna go and like, all right, this is our info box, right? So if that's our info box, what would our content kind of look like? What do we think this might be? Could be anything. Could be an H1, right? How many H1s should be on a page? 1, okay? And only 1 will be on the page on the Mars site when they cycle through. This thing is the active thing, and the other one kind of slides out, okay? And then this becomes the H1. Okay, what would that be? Just a P tag, right? And this, like a button, right? And if it's a button that clicks and takes us somewhere, what should that be? Should it just an anchor tag, right? So an anchor tag inside of a button, or we could just keep it as an anchor tag And as an anchor tag, it'll do the same thing. Like anything can be styled any which way. It doesn't really matter. So if that's what we're looking to achieve, I'm going to go back here. I'm inside. I'm going to go inside of the info class and start adding some content. I want to add that H1. Okay? So I'm just going to do this so that we can see, put that on the right side. I'll go here, put this on the left side, just so that we can see the content that I'm going to add. Okay, that's the text that I want to add. I'm going to add an H1, but this is how I'm going to do it. With Emmet, you can add text inside of the element once it's created using curly braces. So if I put curly braces, I can just type Mars 2020 is wired for sound. And if I hit tab, it creates the H1. Just that easy. Okay? I'm going to go back, boop, just so that you see it. Okay? Now I can also add the greater than sign added nested elements, right? So when we're talking in the world of Emmet, a greater than sign is used to nest things. But what if I want things to be siblings of one another? Not nested, but we're all at the same kind of level, right? There's a symbol that we can use for that. Also, the plus sign will represent a sibling. Okay, so I'm gonna, up here, I'm just gonna add to the notes here. I'm just gonna say, greater than sign is used to nest, okay? And here, I'm gonna add another comment to say, plus is used as a sibling.
What's the shortcut for commenting out in it?
Oh, the comment command question mark on a Mac. Okay. So now I'm going to add an H3. That's what I'm adding. That's what I have as my text. I'm going to add an H3. Could have been a paragraph. Could have been anything. I'm going to add an H3. And I'm just going to write what I have there. Engineers. You can write whatever you want. It doesn't have to be the same thing. Engineers work to prepare the Mars 20. Anybody know about this? I had no idea. Spacecraft for acoustic testing at the jet propulsion lab. Yeah. Okay. So the plus sign is a sibling. And once again, if I was to hit tab, it creates them as siblings. Okay. So once again, if you know the content that you're adding here, somebody showed you the content, you know the structure, this is how I would approach it. I'm not going to write out the element and then go inside the element and do it when I can bang it all out in one shot. Okay? So I'm going to go back. I'm just going to copy this. I'll do it. Tab it. And then I will add it here so that you have it as a reference. Okay? At any point in time, you can be like, what do we do? What's the thing? You have exactly what we did here. Okay? It's a lot of text. So the H1, now all we have is this last thing. Okay? Now I did take this last concept. I probably wouldn't have written it like this, but this thing here, right? On the Mars site, I'm just going to go to the Mars site real quickly, right? I'm going to take a look at this thing. Everyone's been using developer tools to investigate, right? So I'm going to go to developer tools, right? Command Option J will take me to developer tools, or the three little circles up there, more tools and developer tools. Either way, circles, more tools, developer tools, or Command Option J takes you to developer tools. Command Option I takes you to developer tools. These are just shortcuts. If I'm in developer tools, I'm just going to do this. I'm in the Elements tab of developer tools, right? This is where you should have spent, like, I don't know, 90% of your time trying to rebuild press release, right? Press release was about investigating a site, all right? And so if I'm here and I just want to take a look at this site, I click on this little button here. I mean, you can inspect an element where I click. I'm just so used to using my cursor. I click on select an element, and then I go to the element itself. And I'm like, oh, here's the element. If I click on the element, it shows me here where that element is. What's the structure of that element? What classes have been assigned to that element? Where, if I click on this, where I would be going, where it would take me, because it is an anchor tag that has a class of button. So you looked at it and you're probably like, that's a button, right? Well, it is a button visually, but it's not a button element. It's an anchor tag that has been visually designed to look like a button, okay? You could have used a button. I'm not sure why they chose to use an anchor and not a button. I don't know, maybe it's just an extra element that they have to like add and customize. So what I see here is this. I see a footer that has an anchor tag inside of it. Okay, and that's the design I kind of, when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. We're gonna do that. So if I go back to our site, right, I'm gonna expand this a little bit. I'm going to go to the next line and we'll add a footer that has an anchor tag inside it. Right? Well, once again, we're just using error. We need text, yeah.
It's okay to add a footer inside of a header.
A footer is for navigation, and we'll get to that when we get to the semantic elements. A footer is meant to kind of possibly hold navigation on a page, and if the Mars website is using it and it looks the way it does and it looks very professional, they have design decisions to do that. So what I'm showing is that you will see footers used in other places besides the bottom of a page. You will see a nav used in other places, right? I personally need not have chosen to do this. I'm so stuck on footers, they're always at the bottom. But somebody at the site thought this was a great design decision. So I want to show you that there's more than one way to design it. And these people that are building this are really, really smart. So I'm just going to say this. I'm going to do the curly brace and say view image and then tab it. And now we have a view image button. And we basically have our structure, right? I'm going to save it just in case anyone got lost. That's our structure, okay? I'm going to add also what we did here. So I'll put I did footer greater than sign anchor tag and said view image. Okay, so now you have all of the image commands. You could rebuild this thing on the fly. You could have strung all of this together and build out the whole structure in one shot like that. Sometimes I do a challenge in here. We're like, here's a structure, rebuild it with one line in it. So people like work on doing it. Okay? So I'm going to do this just to make sure. Click, thumbs up. Give everyone, I just put a thumbs up in the channel. Just click on a thumbs up, you have this layout. If you don't, you have access to mine, copy and paste it, because this is kind of a code along. I want to code along, do a little something, give you time to like do it, but I'm assuming most should have, there we go, the numbers are coming in. So yeah, you just have to click on the thumbs up. Try not to add any more icons because then I have to like count there's 10 different icons there and I have to be like 5 of this. All right, and so we have another icon. We'll get used to it. I get used to it. It's okay. I want you to express yourself, but at the same time, I want to make my life easier. Okay? Just make sure everyone's there. Once again, if you didn't, you just copy and paste what I have and you're right there, and then we're going to begin doing what we need to get done. 56 seconds. Okay. Ooh. Do have a spelling check there, testing at an extra E. But fixed it. All right. Cool. Once again, don't know if everyone clicked on the thumbs up, but I'm gonna kind of move on. If you don't have it, just take my pen, copy it over yours, be exactly what we have. Now we have the basic structure. And so we are going to apply a background image, because that was important. You did images last week, and you did background images. And when it comes to working with images, an image tag alone isn't going to always suffice. You'll always have to make a decision between a background image and an image tag. And so that's really important. And a lot of your projects are going to be like displaying images on the page, and you'll make decisions on how those images will be displayed, right? So that's really important. We kind of did part of the layout here, going over a container in wrapper here. Now, I just kind of want to explain this container in wrapper a bit. Did anyone read? I do give, in the homework, I give some reading. And in here, I gave the best way to implement a wrapper in CSS. Just an article I found. And in here, they do describe, I want to zoom in a little bit, the difference between a wrapper versus a container. I'm not going to ask you to like recite it back to me or regurgitate it, because if you read this days ago, you're probably not going to remember everything that was here. But they kind of explain that a wrapper, it's kind of to think of a div that contains all the rest of the HTML elements. So a wrapper are used for lots of things, and they're just kind of like a div to contain specific content, versus a container, usually it contains another kind of container. And I would say the container is used more for kind of like the layout of something. It would make more sense if we were playing with Bootstrap. If you ever work with Bootstrap, Bootstrap implements its grid pattern using containers and rows to structure content. So the fact that they have a class in Bootstrap called container meant for layout really means that the container is a layout type choice versus a wrapper that is more for your content, okay? Now they also say, like, the term wrapper and container can also mean the same thing. And it's just as confusing, like, depending on the developer. So, you know, ask your developers, hey, container wrapper, what does it mean? I'd love to hear what they have to say. It all depends on the context. I can't tell you 100%. I can only give you kind of, this is the overall feeling of it, but I don't know 100%. Because it depends on who you're talking to, right? So the way we structured ours was to have a container for more of the layouts, the overall structure, and a wrapper for something. I intentionally chose those. The Mars I didn't use those. I chose those to convey layouts, right? Because maybe you struggled with layouts, okay? And so we're gonna now kind of jump into the CSS. Does anyone have any questions on kind of the layout and our choices for these elements? Okay, I mean, it's pretty basic at this point. Outside of like Maria asking about the footer, which is a good question, right? Footer, why is it there? Cool. So we're gonna jump into the CSS. Before we do the CSS, I'm gonna say we take a 5-minute break, because once we hit the CSS, I just wanna kind of go through the CSS. I don't wanna stop. We finished our layouts, we finished all that. We're gonna do this CSS. So let's take a 5-minute break. I'm gonna set the timer. I do try to stay on time with it. I'm gonna hit it. We got 5 minutes, okay? What's up? Oh, you don't have the border then. So over here in your CSS, take a look at this right here. Let me show you it on the screen. So yours doesn't have this. See what I have on line 10?
Oh, didn't have it?
Yeah, didn't have it.
That's what I was.
Okay. Okay, and Adam? Oh, to create a file on the thing. Oh, so you would just go to File and go New File? When you save the file, so if you go in here and you like do Command S, yeah, if you give it a name, say it's like index.html, and you save it, yeah. if you drop sample site, like drop that, you'll see it. And you have all these tabs, like you can X out of the welcome. All you need is really one tab open while you're working. You don't need like multiple tabs.
And then I think what I do, it's, well, this is supposed to.
Oh, it's Emmett? Yep, you got it, yep.
Question. Why did you put this in, like these quotations?
Because the href, well, that's what Emmett did. So it needs to have something
I
there.
forgot, how do we do this?
Oh, so all we did was this here. So right here, created the footer. So if I take this and I just go anywhere, it doesn't really matter where I paste it, right? So all I'm saying is create another footer with an anchor tag and give it this text. And natively, what it does is, let me go to it. I don't see why it's not. I think because I'm outside of the, yeah, I think I'm outside of the HTML, so it's like, maybe it's not recognizing it. So if I go back up here, I'll just go here one more time. And have it. An anchor tag requires an href. Like you give it an anchor tag because you want to go somewhere. So without an href or this attribute, if you click on it, it would go no.
Okay.
So you only include an anchor tag if you want to go somewhere. Yeah,
Right.
if you have no intention of going anywhere, then an anchor tag is the choice element to choose.
Okay.
So if we didn't want to go anywhere and we just wanted to say something else, we could have put a paragraph or a span or anything else that's not going to elicit us off the page.
Okay.
And so when you do that, since we didn't give it the URL as of yet, it natively puts it there because it's like, you're going to give it to me later. You chose an anchor tag, so you can give me a URL, right? And we're like, sure, later.
Okay.
So you need the quotes there to say that there's just nothing inside. It's not going anywhere.
Got it.
All right.
Thanks.
You got it. All right. All right. That was a solid 5 minutes. All right, let me get out of here. Go here. All right. Let me save this. I'm just going to get a quick glass of water. So let's do this. It's extra time. Give some extra time. So I'm going to do this. We're in here. One of the things that you also had to do was import fonts, right? For the project, for Relaxer, you had to go and import fonts, and that's kind of a big thing. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get rid of, these are the fonts that we want. I already have them here. I'm going to get rid of them, and we're going to go import them from Google Fonts, just so that you get used to doing it. You're going to have to do it later when you build out your nav. I'm going to have you import similar fonts and different fonts so you get used to it. So I'm going to get rid of those fonts. Those fonts don't exist anymore. Okay? They're gone. Saving it. I'm going to go to Google Fonts, and we'll use Google Fonts to import. Really easy to do, but I think some of the things that I did see, like in the text or the instructions, it was like bold, extra bold, and you might have been trying to do like bold or extra bold, and it maybe didn't work, right? So, and I knew that happens all the time. Like I got to go in and like update those instructions to convey. When I teach this specifically, because I know what you're going to go up against, I'm like, let's take a look at this. You're going to see extra bold, that's a number. So I could have conveyed that. Maybe, you know, Brian hasn't taught that particular one. So I'm going to go to Google Fonts. We're hitting Google Fonts now. That's what we're doing. We're going to import Google Fonts. And in here, I want to import, now the fonts that they use on the Mars website, if I went here and I just went to like this description, the Mars website, if I go to computed, I'm going to go to, I know it's a little small, I'll make it bigger. If I go to font family, for their text on this site, they're using Montserrat. That's the font family that they're using. I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to download Montserrat. Like, I want my site to look like their site, which means I need their fonts. They also have some backup ones like Helvetica, Arial, Sans, Sans Serif. They're all these. Everything after this is just kind of native to the browser for the most part. Montserrat is not. It's a Google font, which means we need to get that font. Okay? So it's Montserrat, and I'm going to go to Google Fonts, and I'm going to look for Montserrat with 2 T's, and I get Montserrat. Okay? Now, I want to download 2 different fonts so we can see applying them in 2 different places. I'm going to choose this font and this font. This font natively has underscores. It's underlined. Everything is underlined. We'll be meticulous about where we do this, right? So if I choose the plus sign here from Montserrat, boom, it added it. Awesome. You see how it went from plus to minus? We'll take a look at it in a minute. I'm going to also add the Montserrat Subrayada. It's like the cover, what's the like blood-sucking thing? I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, right? All right. Yeah, that's it. Chupacabra, right? All right. That was it. So now that I added that there, both of these are added. It added it down here to font family selected. And if I click on font family selected, I could see that these 2 fonts have been selected, and that's what I want. But I want to maybe customize them and import additional styling. So if I click on customize, I have the option here. Now, once again, some of these fonts are just limited with how much bold and italic you can apply, and this really doesn't have much. It's got regular and bold at 400 and 700. So these numbers correspond to this semantic naming convention, right? If I choose 400 and 700, they will be translated into bold. That's what bold is. This is what regular font is. So just know regular font is always at a font weight of 400. That's what makes it normal, okay, or regular. Now for here, Montserrat, we can choose a few different ones, right? So I can choose maybe thin at 100, right? Maybe light at 300. I'm just going to choose a few. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to maybe see down here, look, they have these things like extra bold, black, bold, right? These things that you would have been asked to do on Relaxer, this is where it comes from. So I'm just going to say maybe bold and maybe black. I'm not sure we're going to use them all. Once again, once I save it, you'll have it also if you didn't get them all. Okay, so I just chose, I didn't touch the Montserrat, Subrayada, whatever. All I did was thin, light, regular, bold, and black. Once again, you can choose whatever. You'll see your design come to fruition. I'm going to go to the embed now, and I want to embed these fonts. Now I have two choices to embed fonts. I can use a link tag, which would go where? Where would the link tag go in the HTML? In the head, right? I could put it into the link tag, or I could do this. I could import it using the @ sign. Also, because of these style tags, where would that go? Yeah, it'll go in the HTML. It can go in the head, it can go in the body, it can go anywhere. Because it's surrounded by these tags, that's HTML. Okay? If we don't surround by tags, and I copy just the URL here, just this, I leave out this, I'm going to take this and put it directly into my CSS. And so I'm going to copy everything here without the style tags. Don't copy the style tags. Can't put style tags in CSS. I'm just going to copy them. That's all I'm going to do. All right? I'll even do this. I'll slack it out just in case anyone's like, mine doesn't look like his and I have something different. That's fine. I'm going to go back to our Mars site. And here I am going to paste it on line 7. That's where I'm pasting it, on line 7. Okay, I slacked out what I just copied here, put it in Slack. So if you didn't go through the whole process of getting it, just grab it from Slack, put it in, and you'll have it. Okay? And I'm going to save it. Once again, you're looking at my version. You have everything I'm doing. So we have our fonts there. Okay?
Is there an advantage to doing it that way as opposed to putting it in the as having happened?
You know, I don't think there's any more advantage. You can make the decision whether you want. A lot of the times, the head of HTML just gets loaded with a bunch of stuff. Script tags and link tags, and there's so much stuff there that you just get overwhelmed with all this stuff. So at times, if you just want to kind of import a specific font and just have it sitting, it's CSS related anyway, so just put the font there. You could do it. It's just a design decision. I don't think one is any more important because we still need to download the font. If it's in the HTML, we still need to go to Google to get the font. If it's in the CSS, we still need to go to Google to get the font. So we're not saving any time performance there. We still have to go get it. Okay? So we have the font, right? All right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to apply the font, obviously. How do we apply this font? I'm going to go to, now, we set the wildcard here. I had done that for you. The wildcard allows you to set styles that kind of just are carte blanche to everything, and you don't do that with a lot. You do it with a handful of properties. A lot of the times you see that, you'll see it done with margin and padding. So what they try to do is remove any of the defaults so that when you do draw out your layout here, or you do doing this, and you put an H1 here, you know that that H1 is going to be flush against something because you removed all the margin and removed all the padding. We're not, because I really want you to see these things take effect. And why? Maybe in your relaxer, you're like, why the hell did this thing happen? Where's this white space coming from? Maybe we can implement some of that. So I'm not going to do it there. I'm going to go to the body. And I'm going to say body. Okay, I'm creating a body tag. I'm going to save it. And so for our font family, I'm going to say font family, right? And the shortcut for this, is if I type in 2 Fs and tab, I will get font family. 2 Fs and a tab for Emmett. That's it. So we get some shortcuts here too. Trust me, you're going to spend a lot of time in CSS. So it's like, figure out the tiny little shortcuts because it gets really tedious having to do this. If I do font family, I need to specify my font. So I'm going to say Montserrat. Okay. It should have changed, right? So I want to see, did it change? Yeah. See how the font is this font? And then if we change that font, we have Montserrat. Now, once again, what if we hit the site and Montserrat is not available, or Google's not available. Maybe we want to default to other things, and we could say, I don't know, maybe we want to do Arial as a backup font, or sans serif or serif. I'm just saying, it's a backup thing in case this thing isn't here, okay? I'm going to see, if I did change this, I wonder what that would look like. All right, that's Arial. That's Montserrat, right? What's that? Oh, yeah. Do I need a comment? Yeah. There we go. So I'm going to get rid of this once again. Just get rid of it. That's Arial. That's Montserrat. So we know that it's being applied, right? We could also now change the font weight, right? Right? Now, these are the font weights that we imported, right? 3, 4, we're at like naturally 400 now, but we could change it to say, I don't know, if I changed it to say 100, what would it look like? It didn't really hit everything. You know what it hit? Ooh, I doubled up on the footer earlier when I was working through a demo. I have here, let me save this, I don't see why. Oh, here, I see I have this. I was trying to demo something. Doing this didn't change the font weight here or the font weight there, right? Yeah. Yeah.
When we say the font family, list Montserrat and Arial.
You don't have to do Arial. I'm showing you that if Montserrat isn't available, it will default to Arial.
Oh.
It's doing it in an order, in a sequential order here. I just want to point out now that we did font weight 100, these two font weights did not change, right? Okay, so they have something very specific, right? This doesn't always override everything. If I moved these font weights, I'm just curious. If I moved these fonts, maybe if I moved the font, don't do it. I'm just showing you. If I moved it at a much higher, broader, look, it changes. So some things don't override other things, depending on where it's coming from, okay? So where you add this is important. Most of the time, though, I'm saying, most of the time this wildcard is used more for like padding and margin. That's where you're going to see it. They usually set that to be 0. But right now we see if we do this, so I'm going to, if that's where it is, might as well just kind of get rid of it, right? I mean, it's working here. Well, we would have to target those elements individually. And I want just a carte blanche to do this. I want it all to be done immediately. So if that's it, for the sake of simplicity now, we can leverage this. But I definitely want to show you that applying something here hit everything, but applying font weight did not, which means the font weight that was applied to an H1 precedes it. It's like, no, I'm an H1. I have this font weight, and you just can't change it over there because that's not where I'm getting my font weight. It was assigned directly to me as an H1. But for some reason, setting the wildcard overrides all that. Okay? So we have it. We can leave that for now, and we can always target the elements later. If we want the H1 to have a little bit more weight, we can target that later. Okay? So let's move into the container now. Okay? In the container, here, what do we want to do? So when I was writing the CSS here, that's how we're going to write it. We're going to write it very long so that you get used to like the spaces, and when things are connected, you can tie those in. So for the container, I'm going to say body. I'm being excessive here. You're not going to ultimately be doing this all the time, but I'm going to say body, and in our body, we have a div that has a class of container, okay? The space means that this div is a child of body, and the dot means that this class has been assigned. The fact that there is no space here means that this class is assigned to the div container. It is, okay? And so here we have this thing. Here's our container. Doesn't look like, we don't really need to do much with the container, but for Relaxer, you had it set, like the visual design had it not going the full width, right? It was like kind of, I don't know, 75% or 80%, and there was black on either side. So we could emulate that. We could say for the container that contains all of our content, we could give it a width of maybe say 80%. And then this will lead us to centering also. Maybe with the centering of text was an issue, but if we wanted to center these block level elements, we could do it using the margin. Okay, so it does look like I can have these extra elements. So it looks like this must be HTML, that must be body, right? Because my container, according to this HTML, is kind of the top level thing containing the content. So that black line there really is the container. So this must be the body, that must be the HTML. That must be where it's coming from. If I wanted to center the container, how do we do that? Margin, 0 auto, okay? That centers the container. So I'm gonna put here, I'm gonna just put a note, okay? This centers the element. Now, centering an element requires this. I'm gonna save it. That the element have what? Why is it centered? Because we did what to it? There's only two properties here. We gave it what? I mean, what's the other property we gave it? Yeah. It's hard to center something that doesn't have, if I get rid of the width, it takes up the full width. You can't center something that's the full width. So when you're dealing with block level elements, and this is an aspect of a block level element, a block level element takes up the full width of the horizontal space at a time, okay? It doesn't share it, it takes it up. Versus an inline element, which this view image is, this anchor tag is an inline element, and look what it takes up. It only takes up the space that's inside of it. It doesn't take up any more. I could put as many inline elements next to each other and they would happily sit next to each other. Block level elements do not. They are very dominant of the horizontal space. That space is theirs, and no other element can sit there. Not even an inline element can sit next to a block level. So you need this width if you ever want to create something and kind of center it. So I'm going to undo the width so we have it. So it's centered. From that perspective, it's centered. Okay, so we got at least one aspect of center, right? Awesome. So the next thing that we want to do is the header. Okay, if I take a look at the design that we have here. Let me just pull up the design. This is our design. This whole thing must be our header, right? We only added a container, a wrapper, right? A container that we just centered, a header, which is going to be the rest of the vertical space and the horizontal space. We have a wrapper, and then we have that info element, right? So this is our header, and we want to apply a background image to that header, right? That's ultimately what we want to do. We need to apply a background image to this. So let's do it and then see the limitations of using the background image to do this, okay? So here's our header. I'm going to write some CSS for our header. Let's get back to where I was. Okay. So once again, we're in here. Now, you won't ever be writing body, 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 body. It's a real tedious process. I did that to show you the spacing, right? So I'm going to kind of just bail on body now. I don't want to keep doing body. I'm going to say now div dot container space header. Now, why the space for header? Well, if we take a look at our HTML, div class container represents this. It's a div that has a class of container. Once again, we don't need the div to state it, but putting div before it gives it more specificity. The space here means that header is a child of container. They're nested inside of one another. Okay? Now we want to apply the background, right? Once again, I'm saving it, so we have it. I'm going to apply the background image, okay? So I think if I do, let's see, PKI, is it? No, background. No, I'm going to type it out. Background image. And then I'm going to slack out the URL. So you have the URL for the image that we're going to be working with. There is the image. Just slacked it out. and I'm going to apply the background image. And it requires a specific property. URL is the property. And in parens, and in, I use single quotes. There's no difference between double and single quotes here. I just prefer single quotes. I paste it, and now we have our background. But it doesn't look anything like what we want, right? What's the limitation here to doing it? If I did this, if I added this as an image tag, so don't do this, I'm just going to emulate. If I added it as an image tag, I did this, and I went into our header, and I just said image src is equal to blank, and tab it. Let me say, all right, what's the difference between adding an image tag and doing a background image? What visually happens here?
The text is below in a different container.
Exactly. So the image has dimensions, right? The image has a width and height. Now, width and height is visual here. We can see the width and height. When you do a background image, the image to be seen in the proportions you want is dependent on its parent container having been assigned some sort of width or height, right? This element here is only as big as the content we've added. It's no higher. Its height is limited to the content because we haven't told it how high we want it to be. It has no height. It has width, right? It has a width because all block level elements take up the full width. So it has it, but it doesn't have a height assigned to it. So its height is like, hey, you gave me this much content, so that's pretty much how high you want me to be. But an image tag has presence. Just remember that. When you choose to do an image tag, you're going to have to start playing with like the image properties to like force it to fit. How do I get this thing to work? This thing is huge. It's like all the way over here, right?
I'm not sure if I'm going to word this correctly, but when you put it as the background image, let's say it is like that huge of a picture,
Yep.
is it going to like slow down the site because of the properties of the image? You know what I mean?
Oh, no, I know. You still need to download the image regardless. I think maybe because a little bit more of it may need to render, that may hit performance, we still need to go to the site to get the image anyway. So if the image was huge, the size of it as the background image, we still need that time to get that image. And then how we applied it may take like milliseconds, depending. So like render it all out versus just a small section. That may be. But the fact that we have to go get the image, we're still limited now to whatever that performance is to go grab that image. So keeping resources more local to the server might help the server, but I still need to give you those resources. Like your machine needs the image. And I got this image from the Mars website by going to, developer tools, and I examined this thing, and I was like, oh, I know where the image is. Any particular site, you can go to the Sources tab, and in this takes a moment. In the Sources tab, I can actually investigate all the assets that were sent to me. And in here, one of the assets this was really slow for me earlier, was the system folder. I'm not going to go into details of it because it's just, for some reason, it's really slow today. I was doing this earlier, and it just took forever. Kind of even got stuck. I think I'm just stuck. I'm going to have to go back to it. But in here is where the image is. And I knew where the image was because I investigated this, found the image, looked at the background image assigned, and it told me that it was located in some folder here, and I just browsed through it to get to the image. Okay? Once again, I don't know why it's not working right now. It's a little slow. I may get rid of the image tag because that's not what we wanted, right? We wanted a background image. Okay? So that means if we want a background image, and we want to see more, we want to see the whole thing, we got to give what to our header? A height. So, I don't know, let's give it a height. We can give it hard-coded pixels. I mean, I can say, hey, be 900 pixels, and it's not 900 pixels. There we go. All right. Once again, I could give it a hard-coded 900 pixels. What I also want to point out here is that these semicolons are key. Now watch, if I remove this semicolon from this CSS rule, it kind of breaks my code, right? I still get the fonts are working because the fonts were assigned up here. But now the height isn't working, the background image kind of disappeared. So just know, if you're having issues, this is the one thing I want you to do before you reach out to me. You see up here in this dropdown? If I go to that dropdown, I can analyze the CSS. If I analyze the CSS, it will tell me that I missed a semicolon. Okay, and you won't be reaching out to me and like spending hours like, oh my God, this thing won't work, and I'm so like, oh, it's so close. You just missed a semicolon. So if I add the semicolon, the error won't go away. I have to go back here and just analyze one more time to kind of get rid of the errors. And there's no other errors. So just know, if you have an error in your CSS and things aren't working and you knew they were working just before, and then you added something else and you like move stuff around, analyze the thing first, and I guarantee you will almost find that error immediately. Or, I mean, it's pretty relevant where it was, right? It told us where it was. So I'm saying 100 pixels. I said 900 pixels. I'm going to try doing this. I'm going to change this, and I want it to be, let me just see, 100 vertical height. All right. So I'm choosing another type of value here. This VH stands for vertical height. 100% of the actual vertical window that I see. Okay? So it's taking up this 100% of this vertical window. I could have done, let me see if I just did 100%. I want to see, would it be the same thing? Oh, 100% doesn't work, right? It's like, you want to be 100% of the header? Awesome. Like, the header is 100%. Ta-da! You have to tell it to be something else. So I can't just use 100%. I'm using a vertical height on this. And it forces it to be the height of this particular window. Okay? That's actually what the Mars site did also. They had it structured like that. I mean, I work with vertical height and vertical width. You don't use it very often. I almost default to percentages and pixels. We'll get into things like M's and Rems also. But just know vertical height is allowing us to do this. And now we have our image, right? Pretty cool. If I go back to the site, though, and I take a look at the Mars site, I go here. This looks like they have that image. Oh, see, it's kind of stuck, so I'm going to go back to here. The image looks like it's kind of moved over, right? Not in the position I want it to be in. If I go back here, it's kind of not where I want it to be. Maybe I want to move it over just a little bit, right? If we wanted to maybe move it over, we could, using other background properties here. The other background properties that you may not have been exposed to yet is background position. And with background position, we can choose things like, I don't know, maybe center it. Look, I centered the image. It's that easy. It's a background image, and I just tell it I want it to be centered, and then it's centered. Okay? There's other properties here. Once again, this is one of those things where I'm like, I can't go into every background property, or this would just be a background property class. Okay, there's lots of other properties for background image or background itself. Just know that we're doing background position center just to center this thing. So wherever that image is, that's the center. That's kind of what I was looking for. This almost looks like the Mars site, right? We're getting pretty close to it. Okay, that's good. All right, I think we're done with that. Now we're going to hit our mean. What am I doing? Oop. Just trying to get to my other screen. Okay, so what we want to do now is hit the wrapper section. This is our wrapper, all right? A wrapper contains all of that, and it's not in the place that I want it to be, right? If I take a look at our solution here, this thing is down here. It's got a nice kind of like opacity background to it, right? We moved it down, so now we have to figure out how to get it where we want to get to, and then that's where we can start using either margin or padding to do that. We can use padding to push it down or margin for itself to push it down, okay? So I'm going to go back here, and let's see the other thing that we need to do. is also the width. It has a specific width. It's not the full width, right? All right, so let's assign that. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so I'm gonna go back here and I'm gonna write the full path to the wrapper. Once again, a little long-winded. Div dot container space header space div dot wrapper. Okay, once again, container is this element here, header is a child, and wrapper is a child inside of it. And so that is the full path to this thing. We're being excessive here with our paths for the purpose of learning about the paths. Okay? So we have the container, right? So the first thing that we probably want to do here is maybe get its width. Maybe we'll just adjust the width a little bit. So I'm going to say width, and maybe we'll give it, I don't know, I had it at 600 pixels. Let's see, 600 pixels. Oh, yes. Container, right? Sweet, thank you. Okay, now we have the container. It's 500 pixels. We can make it smaller, larger, all depends. Okay. Once again, I'm saving everything I'm doing, so you have it in case you get lost. We have the width. How do I push this thing down? How do I get it down? I mean, there's going to be lots of ways that you can get this thing and put it wherever you want later on. We're going to learn things like the position absolute property, which allows us to put anything anywhere. We'll get to like grid, and we can put things in a grid pattern, or flex box, other ways to do it. But considering this is all you know right now, how do I get this thing down? Okay, so we could assign margin on the top of this, right? I'm going to do mine in kind of alphabetical order. I like kind of writing mine in alphabetical order. I'm going to go up here and fix this, but I'm going to say margin top, right? So if I do top, I can push it from the top. And I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe margin top 300 pixels, and let's see what we get. Boom, pushes it down. Kind of where I want it to be, right there. Margin top pushes the thing down. Now we have it nicely positioned there, okay? The other way to do this could have been using padding. We're going to leave it as margin. I'm just going to show you that if I chose to do it with padding, so I'm just going to comment this out. I'm going to go back to it. You're going to leave it because that is our design decision. If I went here and I said padding, maybe padding top, save this, it's not padding top, maybe 300 pixels. I don't think that this.
You commented out the width level.
Oh, that's it. Sweet. Right. That was it. Let me get rid of it. I was like, wow, that's almost like 600. So I'm able to move this down using padding as well. Okay? Padding or margin will move it down to position the thing. Margin, does anyone know when you would use margin versus padding? Any ideas? So I shall tell you. Margin is when you want to push away from something. If I want to push away from another element, I would use margin to kind of push myself away. And padding is used a lot of times for a container element to kind of like position its element. In this particular instance, I would maybe, my natural instinct is to go margin. That's just what I feel is the right way to go. But if I'm following that sense like, oh, padding is to like force things in, then padding would almost seem like the option. But I'm trying to push this thing away from the top. That's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to push myself away. If I'm trying to push, then I use margin to push away from things, to create distance from them. So I'm not going to use this padding top. We're using just margin top, and that's what we're going to do. Sweet. So we have our margin top. We got it. I want to change the background color of this thing. Right? I mean, if an element is not assigned a background color, the color behind it bleeds out. right? So this thing has some sort of opacity feeling to it. We can see the content. So there's no like true opacity, otherwise the text itself would start to be opaque. But we can bleed and we see what's behind it. I don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and add here a background. Let me just say background. I can use the shorthand now. And I'm going to use this property. RGBA. I'll explain what it is. And I'm going to say 0, 0, 0, 0.6. And I'm going to end it, put the semicolon, and boom, we have it. When we assign colors, we can assign colors using things, right? You did colors the other day, right? Colors are either assigned using the color itself, the name of the color, right? So red is the name of a color, or a hex, right? Hex would be, that for red, I think it says FF0000. Hex codes. We could use RGB, RGB 255.0.0. All three of these should give us red. These two may be a different shade of red. I don't know, maybe there's like a dark red or something. This is just a naming convention for red, but there's, I don't know. These two together can produce, I think, 65 million unique colors. This can produce 65 million colors. This can produce 65 million colors. This is limited to the naming conventions applied to colors, and there's not 65 million naming conventions. There's a handful, maybe 100 or so. I don't really know how many names. So you have more freedom with these two. And then with RGBA, this A stands for alpha, and it allows us to apply an opacity to something. Okay? So the alpha represents the opacity. And so I'm saying, I want no, no, no. I'm devoiding it of color, which means it's black. If I give it color, then it's white. Right? White is the combination of all the colors. 0 is a lack of color. And this just tells me the opacity. So if I play around with this 0.06, if I do 2, you'll see the colors start to fade, and we can start to see the text, right? I'm going to leave it at 6 because I don't want my text to be black. What do I want my text to look like? I want my text to look white. If I want my text to look white, where should I apply that? I could apply that to the wrapper now. We're in the wrapper, right? So we could, if we're in the wrapper, I could apply color and say white, and that will give the text a white color. If I wanted all of my text on the page to be white, where would I assign it? Where's the things or the containers that contain a much more higher level presence, right? Either here or here, right? And then we have to see which one. Maybe color doesn't apply if we added it to here. Maybe it applies here. This is where I would do it, more on the body. We can leave the color white there because that's really what we want. If we need to change it later on, we could. But now we have, what did it not change? Look at our text. What did not change to white? Yeah, this did not, right? So that then tells you that the anchor tag has a color assigned to it that is more specific than setting it at the wrapper level. These other elements will just take whatever you want it to be. I'll be that. This doesn't work quite the same way, okay? So we'd have to target that element specifically in order to make those changes, right? And we will. If we wanted to target it, how would we do that here? How do we target the full path all the way down to the anchor? I'm going to give you a moment to do that. See if you can target the anchor tag based on what we've been doing. Can you target the anchor tag and change its color to white? That's what I want. I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Sometimes we're going to do all this coding along, but I want to see if the principles have kind of ingrained themselves. So I'm going to click on thumbs up. Okay. I'm putting a thumbs up in there. If you can get it white, click on it just so I get an idea. I'll give you just a few minutes. If you don't get it, that's cool. I'm going to walk you through it anyway.
I like that too.
Okay, I'm not sure what I did.
So oh, so I see yours is doing exactly that whole white space. Can you send yours? Can I pull that up on the screen? I want to kind of show what's happening. And I think I know what's happening. So yeah. Oh, hey. I mean, you can delete it. You can remove it. If you ever want, like, mistakenly do it, you can remove it. But don't worry, Emma. It's a good thing. Yeah. Or you removed it, which is also a good thing. All right. So just Slack me then, specifically. Yeah, no. So I hear you. I'm game. All right. Okay. About 7. Sweet. Did you fix it? Or you just did the thumbs up? You were just visually doing the thumbs up. Okay.
How are you the first person doing these with phone? Like I can only do it once. I kind of ask this once someone sends me thumbs, and I click on it, but I can't click on all of them.
Oh, that's weird.
I'll just stop that. Someone does it.
Oh, so I'm going to just say, I'm going to post a thumbs up and just be like, someone put a thumbs up when you're done.
You have to add a reaction, like you hover over it, and then you can
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and add it. I think with a few minutes, it shouldn't have taken much longer. But if it did, once again, you'll see where your shortcomings are. Because we're doing it, I want to get to the anchor tag. So it's going to be div.container space header div.wrapper, right? What comes after that? Okay, so we have a footer space. Oh, did I miss the info?
Yeah.
Right? I had div.info, footer, anchor. That's the full path. Okay? You could do it without, I could have just targeted footer and anchor tag. I'm doing it the long way because I really want everyone to understand nesting and specificity in paths. And this will be important later. This is completely over the top long. It's not something I would normally write, but considering you're new, I want you to understand that these spaces represent what? What do the spaces represent? Child elements, right? The fact that there is no space here means that wrapper is a class of div. Info is a class of div. And so when you start looking at it, you can draw this out and know by looking at this the structure of your HTML. Now if I said color, white, that gives it a color of white, right? That good? Everyone good with that? That's just the full path. So I'll slack out the full path. I'll slack out the whole rule, just in case anyone you get lost. Slack out the whole rule. And then I want to show one issue that someone had. Emma had this one issue. Emma did not fix it. Tell me you didn't fix it. Okay, so I'm going to show you this. This is where margins and paddings really start to get a little wonky. Remember when it was brought up that there was gaps, right? Someone said, hey, I had some gaps. Well, I don't know, that looks like a pretty big gap, right? What's missing from our design that we don't see here? Because that's where it's at. It's a pretty visual thing. What's missing from this design, I'm going to show you ours. What do you see here that you don't see here? Okay, I see container with margins. Now look, it doesn't matter where you look. So even if I looked here, look at that and tell me what's the difference between that and what we have. The border's there, right? We have border here, we have border around everything. And so if I go back to Emma's, there is no border at the very top, right? None of this stuff contains border. And so if I investigate, and this is what we do, if I'm trying to figure out what's going on, I go to developer tools, and I go and I inspect the elements. I go here and I'm like, let me go here and go to the wrapper and look like, the wrapper is pushing all the way up, right? Was it the header? What did we give? We gave the wrapper, right? The wrapper is pushing past the header and going all the way up. It's not pushing against the header. It's actually pushing past the header. Okay, and this is where, in Relaxer, it always happens. You get gaps. You give an element something that has some sort of margin top because you think you're going to push down from it, only to realize that it's going to bleed out of it, and that margin goes higher. In order to contain this to where you need it to be, there's two ways to do this. And this is why I love going into developer tools. I'm in wrapper right now, right? And I see that wrapper has this. I'm going to go into header because that's where I need to cap this. It's not the wrapper because the wrapper is the one doing the pushing. The wrapper is pushing against header. So I'm going to click on header. Then I go over here. Whenever I'm doing this stuff, I'm almost always in DevTools playing around with the CSS. When I get it the way I want, I copy and I paste. This is my little development environment, hence developer tools, right? So if I go to header and I give it two things, both of them are going to work. If I just give it a padding of, say, 1 pixel, it works. Like, this thing has something to push against now. Like, the padding actually is kind of some boundary. It represents a boundary. I don't know why it does. I just know that that's what fixes it. The other thing that I could do here is add a border of a 1 pixel solid, and that also provides a boundary. That margin needs to push against something, otherwise it will bleed outside the element. Doesn't always happen, but it happens, okay? Look at our H1. Is our H1 bleeding outside? Is that margin that is in our H1, is that pushing outside of wrapper? We have the same problem here. And that's why, like, kind of rebuilding this really walks you through the things that you were working through with Relaxer. Everything that you did is kind of going to be shown here to a certain extent. So I really wanted to point that out. The fact that we have on ours all these borders, everything works, beautiful. But the minute we go back and we remove those borders, I would have the same problem. If I went here, do you see how this H1 has margin on top and bottom, right? If I remove the border now, if I go here and I comment out the border, watch what happens. You ready? All of this margin and my H1 now bleeds outside. The margin is like right up here, okay? So you either need 1 pixel of padding for it to push against, or you need a border. You make the decision. Or you just remove margin from the thing and you go up for padding, right? If we didn't do margin here and we did padding, we wouldn't have had this problem at all, okay? If I went back here and I was like, all right, I'm still gonna do this, but maybe I don't wanna do this wrapper margin top. Maybe I don't wanna do that. Maybe I wanna go here and say padding top, 300 pixels. Then it works, right? So your choices of when you should use margin and padding are going to be key to whether the element has something to push against.
Yeah, I think the margin is like the space between like the content and the div.
Yes.
Whereas padding is like the space
Within the thing, exactly.
So that way, the minute you said that, like you said, where's the border? I was like, oh yeah, it needs to push.
It needs to push. So in this instance, because what are we going to do at some point in time? Remove our borders, right? And if I'm going to choose to put 1 pixel padding, why don't I just put 300 pixels padding, right? So I would go back to our design and remove the margin top from wrapper. So take a moment to remove the margin top, comment out margin top on our wrapper, and give it padding on the header because we already know what's going to happen, okay? I wanted to do this later. I kind of wanted to be like, oh, it's going to happen, but it happened, and I kind of wanted to show it. Okay? Once again, I'm saving it. That's it. Once again, we're looking to kind of review everything that you have with Relaxer, because all of these things are key to you designing anything. Anything that you build from this point on is going to require some of these things. Centering, dealing with these gaps, when to use margin, when to use padding. And this is key right now for us to successfully do that. Okay? I'm going to save that. Okay? It doesn't save, our H1 still has, it's still bleeding out, right? We have to come back here and do something now with this also, right? Cool. So we got our footer. Really, we're pretty kind of close to what we want to do. If I wanted to move this thing over, right? Should I use margin or padding now? Padding, right? We've kind of learned, like, maybe do the padding on things. So we could always now go, see how I said padding top on the header? We could do padding left, maybe say, I don't know, 50 pixels maybe? And it pushes it over. It's kind of where we want. Where we want it to be. Now we're almost there, right? Our design is almost complete. We got our background image, right? And save this. Now, giving it that extra space kind of pushed it down, right? If I remove this padding top, just well, look what happens. That 100 vertical width. So doing one thing means you're going to have to do something else some other time. Like, you're going to learn this, and you'll be like, oh, this is great, I fixed it. And all of a sudden, everything breaks and everything changes. And you're like, for now, we're just going to leave it. I'm not going to deal with it right now. But we would have to set this thing, our vertical height, to be, I don't know, 300 pixels less. Right? I'm not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to leave it like this for now, just to keep it. Okay? Because maybe at that point in time, it's not the header that has 100 vertical height, but what else could we assign the vertical height to maybe limit that? I wonder if I did this. If I took it out of there and I put it in the container, did that do it? No, doesn't change it. So I'm going to go back. I'm just going to leave it right there. Okay? All right. So we have it. Looks pretty good. Now, the only thing is this. We need to get some space in this box, right? And we learned that what's going to allow us to do that? Padding, right? I want to create space within this box. So I'm going to create a new tag here. What's this element? This is wrapper. All right, so here's our wrapper, right? So in our wrapper, we can do this. Padding, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe like 20 pixels all the way around. Boom. Now, does it look like this has more space than this does? All right, I put 20 pixels, and yet this is clearly being pushed down there. What's causing it?
Inline.
Well, what's exactly causing it?
That the padding is bleeding over with the other element.
Okay, how would we be able to see that? If I went to developer tools, just to confirm, if that's what's happening. If I go here and I go to the element, it doesn't look like anything's actually outside of it. So nothing is bleeding outside of our wrapper. There's our header. Nothing's bleeding outside. I mean, this is bleeding outside because, once again, it's too wide, but that's not what we're concerned with. What's causing this thing to push itself down further than the padding that we assign? investigate it. Go to developer tools and you tell me what is causing this to go down. It's important that you learn to work with developer tools. Developer tools are going to be key to you figuring out these things. I could tell you, you tell me. Somebody's got it. Slack it to me. I'll give you a hint. It's one of these things. But just don't say it without looking and confirming. Get it? Anybody? Oh, what's causing this space? We put 20 pixels of padding around this thing, and yet this element is clearly more than 20 pixels. Did you see it? You guessed. Can you find it though? You are right. It is the margin, but I want to guarantee that you visually saw it.
I see it, 21.4.
Yeah. So if I'm in developer tools, right? Once again, always spend your like Friday nights just investigating stuff. Find a site that you like and go and investigate and rebuild the things that you like. And developer tools is that thing. That's how I rebuild Mars site and 3 other sites we do in this class. I base it on other sites that I like. If I'm here and I investigate this thing, look, I just highlighted the H1. I went directly to the text. And that orange, if I click on it, I already know what the orange means, but if I click on it and I go to the computed tab here, I see the box model. You learned about the box model last week. This is the box model. Margin is part of box model. It's pushing away. H1s have margin that natively push things away from it. That's what it's doing. And so this has 21.440 pixels margin. This is not something humans write. I don't write 21.440. I don't do that. That's something that the browser has written for us. And so it has margin top and bottom. Doesn't really have, it only has the border that we would have given it. I removed the border. Padding, right? No padding. And then it has a width of 600 and a height of 39.200. Okay? So how do we fix this? What's the fix? Set margin to be 0. If we set margin on the H1, we will get carte blanche 0 applied to all the margin here. Now, I just want to point out, like, remember I said the wildcard is used for 2 additional settings, right? This wildcard up here is used for what else did I kind of mention? We should be assigned. Font weight isn't always it. I just did it there because it took effect. What's the other 2 things? Anybody remember that I mentioned? Sometimes it's yes. So what if we just make this decision, knowing that we're going to have other elements that have margins and paddings and things like, I don't want you to have margin and padding unless I tell you to have margin and padding. And that way I avoid this thing pushed away here. This thing's acting weird over here. I don't want that. So in our wildcard, if I say padding 0 and margin 0, look, our content is void of any margin and padding. This is a good approach. Okay? There's tools out there. One's called Reset CSS, and another tool is called Normalized CSS, and they contain CSS settings that kind of remove the natural settings applied so that you have something like this, and you're not surprised later on with settings that came out of nowhere. You're like, Where the hell did this thing happen? I didn't know about that. Okay? This is a very short version of either reset CSS or normalize CSS, either one. Okay? I'm going to save this. Okay? That's all we did. Just made that in the border. I'm going to I will slack out. I'm going to get rid of setting this. I'm going to get rid of this comment here. I'm going to just slack it out so everyone is on the same page. And you have it. Okay. So we're on the same page with this. Cool? It's easy enough. Now, if we wanted to emulate this, right? If we wanted to, where's mine? That's not mine. Right? If we wanted to do something like this, well, then we could start adding things here now too, right? Maybe I push this down further. Well, how would we push away from elements now? How would this element push this thing down or this push back up on this? What we would use? What pushes? Margin, right? I wouldn't use padding here on these things because padding is for the internal thing. And if these two elements want to push away from each other, then one of them should choose to use margin. Either this uses margin bottom or this uses margin top, right? Now the fact that this element is between two other elements and it looks like there's space between them, where would be the best place to set margin? Is it better to set margin on one element that pushes away from two or set margin in two separate places? Which seems easier to manage? One place. And so that I would go to this H3 to set the margin. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go back into our CSS. And I'm going to keep this stuff in order. When I write the CSS, I kind of keep it in order of the elements that I'm hitting. Okay? So I know that the H3 that I'm targeting is in info. It's not in footer. It's in info. So I would create a new rule just above that and say this. Div.container, space header, space div.wrapper, space div.info, space H3. Okay? Because the H3 is a child of this is a child of that's a child of that, and so on. And then we could say margin. We could use the shorthand and say margin like this. If we did the shorthand, I'll do it the long end, I'll go to the shorthand. If I said margin top, I don't know, 20 pixels, let's see what that does. Pushes it down. I could say margin bottom, 20 pixels. And it works, right? There is a shorthand to this. I don't always want to say margin top, margin bottom, margin left, margin right. These two values here are identical. So I could roll this up into something like this. And then I'll comment out. Let me comment these out. And I'll show you the shorthand for it. Margin, 20 pixels, 0. And what I'm saying now is if margin top and bottom, 20 pixels, and margin left and right, nothing. That's what this shorthand does. And a lot of the time, when you start breaking these things, the margin top, margin bottom, you would do this, okay? It's usually how it gets done. So anytime you're investigating sites and you see one value of margin, one value of padding, it means everything. The box model, top, right, bottom, left. It's being applied to all these things, okay? Cool? So we're almost there, right? The only thing would be this image tag, this anchor tag, right? How do we get rid of the underline in an anchor? I don't know if anybody remembers maybe doing a text decoration. Yeah, all right. When needs to remember, let's just go out. Text decoration, none. And it goes. Okay? Text decoration, none. None. This is really, you're going to use this for the anchor tags. Anchor tags naturally have an underline. That's what they have. And we don't want them to have an underline, right? An underline visually indicates that it's an anchor tag, right? But if it's part of a navigation, you know that that's going to take you someplace if you click on it, right? You can't go to a site that has a navigation and be like, what happens if I click on it? Oh my God, is it going to take me someplace? You know it's got to be an anchor tag. An anchor tag will take you someplace else. How do you style that button to look like that now? This button, what do you think we do here? Margin or padding? Like I just dropped a pen. It's like, I don't know. What do you think? How about we start with just giving it a background color? How about that? I'll give it a background color, all right? So I'm going to give it a background color. Here it is. I'm in the anchor tag. We created this earlier, and I'm going to say background, and we'll give it a specific color. Let me get the exact color. What's the color that I give it? Background color. All right, I'm going to slack out the background color. All right, I just slacked it out. You can add, you can copy and paste it. I mean, I did background color before, and there it is. Does the background color, now that it's applied, give clear indication as to what is happening with this element? Well, these elements take up the full width, right? This thing takes up the full width by default. This thing took up the full width until we told it not to. The only settings that we applied to this anchor tag is a background color, a color of white for the text, and text decoration none. And we can clearly see that this element does not take up the full width, right? And that's because it's an inline element. Inline elements do not take up the full width. They only take up the width of their content. So if that's the case, how would I create space around the text within the thing? Padding. Yeah, that's where we're going. So I'll put padding here. I don't know, maybe padding, I don't know, 10 pixels, let's see. Oop, that's really huge, so maybe 5 pixels. Boom. Okay? So padding works. Cool. And then we have what looks like our design, right? That was kind of what we were shooting for. We have fonts being applied. So we did fonts that you learned last week. We kind of did the box model again, right? We learned how gaps are being produced, and our choice of using margin can cause those gaps. Padding will not, but it did increase our height, so we have to work on that. We didn't center anything yet. We'll center that in just a minute, and then layout. So, oh no, we did. We centered this thing right here, right? We centered it. If we wanted to center, just so that if you wanted to center all the text inside of the wrapper, all we'd have to do is this. I'm not going to leave it because I don't like the design, but you would do text, align, center, and then all the text would be centered. It's just the two different ways. Centering an element, like a big element, like a container, requires that you give it a width, and margin 0 auto moves it over. If you want to center text, then it's just text align center. Centers the text. Okay? We can leave it there just so that you know text align center is doing that. And then our padding hasn't changed, right? Cool. That was a lot to rebuild this out. Once again, I wanted to emphasize along the way creating these long kind of winded paths, because these will be very specific later on to help you override settings. Okay? And then to emphasize really the background images and like the paddings and margins, so we can like, this is kind of solidified to a certain extent. Because this will always come up. You're going to come back to me and be like, this thing isn't here and this thing is moving, and this is always going to be a problem. All right. So why don't we do this? Why don't we take just another 5-minute break? Got to give a break every hour. And then come up and we'll jump into kind of working on the nav. And we might only have time to do it with inline, and if we do, then we'll do it with the block next class. Just take a 5-minute break. I'm going to set the timer. Timer. 5 minutes. Here we go. Yep. Yeah.
One of the values that we saw inside of the, I don't know what we call them, attributes or whatever.
Yeah.
Set target.
Yes.
What is that?
So in a target is when you want to, the target for, let me just go into it. Here's our anchor. And so we didn't have the target here, right? Target is usually, when I use the target, I use the target to tell it to either open up a new browser window. If I don't do anything here, then it will open up. If I was to click on this anchor tag, it would take me to, it would refresh this page and take me someplace else. So the target, I can kind of trigger it to say, open up a new tab and take me there. So if I did take maybe this Mars site, right? So if I just took this site and I put it in our href, right? I'm gonna save this. If I click on the view image right now, it's gonna refresh this page and take me directly to the Mars site, which is not what I want. If I say target is equal to, I think like an underscore or blank, either one, if I do this, it opens up a new tab altogether. So it's what's the target of where, when you click on it, what's the target? Right here or something else? Okay? Let me get rid of this. Yes.
Okay, so for some reason on my computer,
yeah,
see the image repeats, and on the top and the bottom, it has a bit of the repeating. It has a bit of the repeating image.
Ah, so that becomes a property. See, I'm just seeing if it's happening on mine. That would be this. This is a property for background. I'm going to go right here. What we would say is background repeat, no repeat. Repeat. And then that would stop it from repeating. Mine's not repeating, but if you add that as a setting.
Yeah, for some reason, even when I refresh your code pen, yours was repeating, even though it is on my screen, but it doesn't repeat it.
Yeah, background. Yours was repeating as well? Okay, that's the property. So the property is, yeah, background repeats. And it's no repeats. Yeah, no repeat.
Still a lot of like
So then that looks like maybe you have margin top. This is you still using margin, is it? Go to your, is this the header? Go to the wrap. So what's pushing that down? Oh, wait, push it. Send me your code pen. I'll open it up. Just one second. Send it to me, and I'll take a look. All right. So here, I'm going to pull yours up so I can just see it. All right. So I'm going to investigate to see what could cause. So it looks like there's a lot of padding. Like all I saw was this huge amount of padding here, which just seems to go all the way from the top to the bottom. Right? So if I go to the container, here's our container. right? And then here's the header, and the header almost looks like it's all padding. That's what it looks like. It almost looks like the header is like all padding, because look, you put padding top 900 pixels, and if I remove padding top 900 pixels, it doesn't push it down. So I would say do padding top 300 pixels. Okay? And then you'll get it. You just did way too much padding. Forcing the thing like more padding than there's space in the element, and it's just like.
If I wanted to move this further down, how would I get it?
Yeah. Well, you could use more padding.
But then
It gives you the height. We have to adjust that. We can fix that later on. Yeah. I'm just trying to deal like one issue at a time and like, hey, we fixed this other thing and now we have this thing. You're going to see CSS drive you absolutely mad. Like CSS, you're going to love like designing something and then you're going to hate when it doesn't work. And then you're like, why? I changed this thing and this other thing doesn't work. All right. Did anyone's not work at all? Or you had some issues? I just fixed maybe one or two problems. I know, Michelle, did you have something you wanted me to look at? If you want to send it to me, I can take a quick look. Once again, it's the kind of thing, if you're doing exactly what I did, then it should look like this, right? So at any point in time, if it doesn't, then that means you're just off by something. That was it. I used to have a student in my day class that constantly said, I'm doing exactly what you're doing, but it doesn't look like it. My answer was always, well, then you're not doing exactly what I'm doing, right? So if you're doing exactly what I'm doing, it's going to look like mine. You must have made a setting change, right? If you can just assume that you made a setting change, then you'll look for the answer versus like, I don't know what happened. I didn't do anything. It's the same thing. You're not looking for the problem, okay? So it's important. All right. So looks like let's jump in to, all right. So we're good. I'm saving it. That's our thing, all right? I kind of like it when it's the full width of the page too without centering this thing. I'm not really crazy about it. I would get rid of like the width here so it would take the full width. I kind of like that. I don't like the space there. I was doing it to show center. I was doing it to emphasize centering using margin and centering using text align. That's why I was doing it, right? When we centered something, we used two things. We used margin 0 auto, right? And then we also used text align center. Okay? These are the two ways that we center. We know that the gaps were done by margin, right? Margin pushing down on something. That this whole gap was a margin issue. Margin issue. We fixed that using padding. We did the background image. A few had an issue with the background image repeating, and there's another background property called background repeat, no repeat, and stops the thing from repeating. Okay? And then layout was this, how we structured our content. Okay? We have a good idea, laying things out and using the box model, and that seems like we got a real solid understanding of that. So I'm going to move to start working on the navigation. And you'll see when we get to the navigation how that applies to the inline and block. Okay? So I have a horizontal nav, standard thing. You're going to use it on all your sites. If you look at any of the projects that I posted here in the, I didn't look at it, but in the final projects, oh no, it's not here. You know, have a link to the final projects. I'll add it. It's not right here. Oh no, because that's I'm on the wrong one. Here's final projects from my past two classes. You can take a look and you can see what you're going to see is like 90% have navigations, they have images, and so I emphasize these things. But these are all the final projects. As I see things, I'll come back and be like, oh, let's take a look at this person. But take a look and get some ideas. Okay, there's a lot of projects in there for you to look at. So let's take a look at just horizontal. Now, a horizontal nav, our navigation, can be written in two different ways. it can be written as a nav element, and this is coming from semantic HTML. So we're going to get into semantic next class. Just know that nav, this nav element is a HTML5 element. Didn't exist before. And if that nav did not exist before HTML5, how do you think I would have targeted something that would have acted like a nav? Yeah, right? So we would have done something like this. Div class is equal to nav. This is how the web was written before some of these semantic elements came out, right? We still needed a semantic way of targeting things. Div being our most generic container, so we had to give context to the generic container using classes. But now we have nav. So we have this, it has a UL with LIs and anchor tags. You need an anchor tag because you're going someplace, right? Why do you think we choose a UL? What does a UL entail? What does an unordered list mean in this context? List of things that probably have some sort of, well, it won't be like that by default. We have to add something for it to kind of go horizontal. But when you have a list of things, that list of things usually entails something, right? There's some sort of relationship there in the list of things, right? Unless you're like, a list of things to do today, well, those things that you put are things to do today. They could be random things, but the relationship is, I'm doing them today. And then I have a to-do list where I do things tomorrow. That's a different set of things, right? Cleaning the house, list of things to clean the house. What I'm trying to convey is that a UL is an unordered list of things that have a relationship. When I'm looking through your HTML and I see an unordered list, I know that content has a relationship to one another. The relationship here is that these are all navigation elements. That's their relationship. They are nav elements, and so we organize them in this particular way. Now, this kind of nav is used on several different sites. Mars uses it, not Moberry's this other site too. It was a Moberry site. I'm just going to open this up. Moberry site uses it. If I go here to investigate, right, I open up developer tools. We're going to spend a lot of time in developer just to really practice it. If I go here and I take a look at this, I see here, here's my UL with a LI and an anchor tag. This is how people are doing it. You'll also see when you investigate sites, all this other type of like classes, right? Nav, ML-Odo, D-None, D-Level, Flex. I think they're using Flexbox here, but outside of that, yeah, they are, because they're doing display flex, but I don't know what ML-Odo means. I have no idea what D-None means. It probably is a third-party tool or a naming convention that they've decided, but these things have context. So just know when you're looking at other sites, you're not going to be able to make sense of all of this, but you can always kind of look over here and see what's being applied. I'm only going here so you can see UL with an LI and a nav and an anchor tag, right? It's not wrapped in a nav, right? I don't see anything that says nav, but it's a UL. We're going to use nav as our element, right? So that's one. If I went to this side, I go to this side a lot too. You're going to see me go to this side. I like the site. I think it's a great visual site. And I'm going to go to the navigation once again. I'm going to investigate the nav and see, oh, here we go, a UL with LIs that have anchor tags as well as spans inside of them. Okay, cool. And this UL is inside of a nav, right? You can always investigate. If you see a navigation that you love, investigate it. Go to the navigation. See what it is, okay? That's Moberry's. I think I had maybe one more. Food Sense is the other site we're going to constantly go to, because this one we actually build out portions of this. I love this site. Here's another nav. What do you think the nav is? Right? That looks like the nav, right? And that also looks like maybe it's another type of nav. And once again, if I investigate these elements, I will see that they are anchor tags inside of an LI, part of a UL. You never have a UL, you never have LIs by themselves. LIs are always inside of a UL. That's just the way it is. You could put them by themselves, but you'd be like, what the hell are you doing that for? People look at you crazy. And then you have a nav, right? I just want to emphasize that this structure is being used, and now that you see it, you're probably going to go home and start investigating all your favorite sites and say like, oh my God, that's it. So if that's what we want to do, another way to build out a nav is to have a nav with just anchors. Okay, that's just another way of doing it. That's not as popular. Okay, there are sites like this Volocopter site. Actually, I had to kind of find the sites. I don't investigate a lot of sites. Just do. This one's like a German company, and if I go to it and I take a look, I have some sort of nav element that's given a class of navigation that has a grid container. They're using CSS grid here, I think. We're going to learn grid. And then they have just anchor text. Just another way of doing it. I've researched like one way versus the other, and there's not a whole lot of documentation as to why one is chosen versus the other. I think the whole ULLI thing is semantically organizing your content. When you're designing your layouts, I give my layouts a structure that represents things that have a relationship. That's what I do. Give things containers and wrappers and that. So we have two different ways to do this, right? Two different ways. So if we do the anchor tag, the cons of the anchor tag is anchor tags are inline elements. And inline elements, you cannot set margin top and margin bottom on inline elements. They don't have that ability. And the other important thing that you cannot set is height or width. How did we give our little button earlier a height and width? What did we use to do that? What? Padding. So even though you can't manually set height or width, I can convey height and width through padding, right? So I can get over that. If it doesn't have margin top and bottom, then I can't push it away from it, right? So maybe I have to depend on the other element to push away from it if I'm going to choose that. So just know that there's that issue, okay? You can change it to display block if you want. So we can play with this display property either way. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to go here. Here's a little code along for our navs. So when you thought this was over, it's not over. Okay. I'm going to slack this out. So this is a version of the previous site, or just in case anyone might have had issues building it out. This is our site. Maybe there might be some nuances, some differences. But what I've done is I've added this navigation up here. So here we go. I've added a nav with anchor tags. Okay? So I have a nav with anchor tags. Okay? And so we want to style this nav with anchor tags to look like that. Right? I want to remove the underline, and I want to push it over, and I want to give it maybe some widths and heights to it. Right? So where do we do that? So in the CSS, I've added two things. Here's our path to our nav element and the path to the anchor tags. Okay? So how do we write our path to the nav? Can you write a path to the nav, and can you write a path to the anchor tags? You know how to do this. Take a look at the HTML, compare what we have here, and you should be able to draw. I'm not asking you to do any styling. Just get to the nav and the anchor tag. And start with div container. That's what I want you to start. Just start with the div container. I just did it. So if you're confused on where to go, these are the two paths, right? Container is this thing, and this thing has a header. Inside of our header is now our nav. Okay? That's where it is. And if I investigate it, you would see it right here. All you have to do is like take a look here, compare it to here. Here's div container, there's our header, there's our nav. To get to the anchor, it's the same path, just the space. And there's our anchor, right? Okay. What's the first styling thing you think we should do here with our anchors? They look pretty ugly the way they are, right? Move the underline, and how do we do that? Text decoration none. All right, that's our first thing. We got our text decoration none. Awesome. You know what's fun about doing this is like being able to just build anything on the fly and put some stuff together is like a great feeling to be able to do that. You will, at the end of this class, be able to do the same thing. Sit there watching TV, looking at a site, looking at a commercial. I look at advertisements on the subway now, and I'm like, man, if I had my laptop open, I'd be building that thing right now. If I had those assets and images, I could build it to spec. It's just a great feeling. Now that we moved that, if we take a look at our Mars site, where is our nav? On what side? It's on the right side, and yet our nav here is where? On the left side, right? So we want to get it over here, right? We want to put it over there. How can we do that? What's at least two ways that we could move something over? We've been doing that all class, right? We're moving things around. Padding left, text align right, margin left, right? There's at least three different ways to do this, to get the content over to the right-hand side. I would prefer to do something like text align because it's just going to move all the text over. Okay? So where would I assign text align? Which one of these? We're only working with these two things. These two elements are all I'm working with. In the nav. So if I go to the nav and I do text align right, boing, moves to the right. Now here's the thing though, like it's so flush against the right, I don't know, visually that's gonna drive me crazy, right? I don't want it to be flushed against the right. So what could I do to create space there? So we could do padding on what though? I tell you this, we can do padding on two different things, but
Yeah.
I feel like everyone's like, no, I don't know.
You must space out the words, but then you must space it away from the head.
Okay, so we have two things that we need to do. I need to put some space between the words, and I need to put some space between the last word, all the words, and the top and the bottom, right? Two different ways that we can do this. What if the easiest way was this? What if we went to our nav, and I was like, I'm sorry, we went to our anchor tag, and I was like, padding all the way around, I don't know, 10 pixels. Didn't look like it did padding on the top, right? Or did it? I don't know. Doesn't look like it, but I'm going to go to Developer Tools and take a look. And, I'm going to say something happened here because I can clearly see there's padding on the bottom. But this padding is, the element is kind of bleeding out now, right? You'd have to assume that. I'm all the way at the top, and yet I see that this element has padding left, bottom, and right, but I don't see it on the top. It's just kind of pushing out of the element. It's like pushing above this. So we're kind of like, all right, well, how do I fix that? I'm going to go to the nav now and add padding. So I'm just going to go here into our nav. Let's give it some padding. Padding, I don't know, 10 pixels, right? 10 pixels all around. Let's see what happens. Boom. Cool. Now, I see my anchor tag does indeed have padding on the top. But for some reason, because its parent element didn't have padding, that padding top just kind of bled out on top, okay? One way to always visualize what's happening and where things begin and end would be to add a border 1 pixel solid to the nav so you can see where the nav begins and ends, as well as 1 pixel solid to the anchor tags so you can see where they begin and end. Okay? Once again, I did stress using borders so that we could visually see what's happening. And so my question is this, like, where's this space coming from? If the anchor tag begins here and the next one begins here, where is that white space coming out of nowhere? I didn't put that white space there. You're not going to know the answer. It's just a trippy thing with the HTML. It just adds it there. It comes from something like font size. It's a weird thing. You'd have to fix it with setting font size 0 on the body and then assigning a specific font size to the anchor tags. Unless you have to do that, if I removed the border around the anchor, you would never be able to tell, right? And if you can't really tell, who really cares?
What if I wanted the boxes to be the same width?
Yep.
And not the spacing between the words? So like I want.
Well, we can't, with inline elements, we cannot set a height or a width on inline elements. So we'd have to use padding to emulate the height and width.
So you have to do independent padding on each.
Exactly. And we are now just, I'm going to put the border back. We are kind of doing a carte blanche on all of the anchor tags, padding around, and we kind of moved it over, right? Does that make sense what we tried to do there? Okay. And then we kind of have our nav, right? I'm showing you a way to implement this particular nav. And that if you start seeing these little lines between them, you're like, what the hell is that? Where'd they come from? They may be an issue later on. For us right now, they're not a big deal. This is probably not the way that you're going to do it. I would push to do it as a UL and LI. That's something that I push for. I wouldn't push it to do that. But once again, the reason why we're doing this is to convey that in anchor tag, we did padding. I'm going to just get rid of the padding to show you that an anchor tag is an inline element, and that inline elements do not have a width. If I gave this thing 200 pixels, nothing changes. If I give it a height of 200 pixels, nothing changes. Inline elements do not have a height or a width. We cannot set it. Nor can we set margin top and bottom. So if I said margin, I don't know, 100 pixels, I'm being excessive here. That moves them around, right? Maybe not, that's too excessive, maybe 20 pixels. I can push them away from each other. I have to move this out, but I can't use it top and bottom. This has no effect on inline elements. And an anchor tag is an inline element, okay? And that's why I would opt to use padding to emulate that, right? So this won't work on an inline element, and I'll put that as a note. The settings below won't work on inline elements, okay? And that's why we're choosing to do padding here. So just know, with inline elements, if you really just want to push them away from each other left and right, then margin, that's cool. But margin top and bottom won't work. And so if you want to create space, you can use padding to do it, right? Because it still visually looks like they're pushed away from each other. If I move the border, it just looks like they have distance from one another. I don't know how that distance was created without investigating it, but I knew that it is created, okay? Can you get in line? Like doing it this way, right? Awesome. It's 9:09. Okay. So we don't have a lot of time. 9:09 right now. Class ends at 9:30. I did have a lab. Now the lab would take, I think, normally it might take about, say, 15, 20 minutes just to build it, and then do other things like import fonts, because I want to always convey that you understand how to import fonts. I also have your letter spacing as another property that you would need to apply. And then any additional styling to get this thing to look like that. That is an image. See this? This is an image. What your job would be is to take that image and create a nav from it. Now I would go down here, and in this, on line 32, is where you would create nav element with anchor tags to emulate that. Without telling you specifically how much padding or where to do it, you could use padding on the nav. You could use padding on the elements. I don't care how you would get it done. I would want you to visually emulate this thing based on what you said. Okay, and then I had some bonuses. Like go get the GA logo. You uploaded things to Cloudinary, right? Has anybody been uploading stuff to Cloudinary? That's what I did with the Mars site stuff. I took the image, downloaded it, uploaded it to Cloudinary, and then I use it via Cloudinary. So you would find the GA logo, download it, upload it to Cloudinary. If we could target the Contact Us tab and make it kind of active as though we went to the GA site. Say we went to General Assembly. Right? You see how this Find Your Course button up here, see how it stands out? How do you think you would make it stand out?
Hover.
Okay, hover, but the one thing that makes it stand out here right now is what? The background color, right? How would you target this one element? With an ID or a class, right? Either one, an ID or a class would work fine, right? The fact that it's the color red, I might use a class and just do class red, and then I can use that red here, I can use that red here, right? So you could target something doing that, very, very specific. Okay, where is it? Here. And then there's a ems to pixel conversion tool. We didn't get into ems and pixels yet. I showed you pixels. We did a vertical heights. I mentioned ems. We didn't get into it. I was going to show the tool and just kind of like, once again, these are bonuses. What I want to do is when I give out a lab, sometimes the labs could take, somebody that's really good at it could take me 10 minutes. Somebody that's just kind of working through it and trying to understand it could take you 20 minutes. The fact that that's the case, I always want to give bonuses to push you to keep going. So you're never just like twiddling your thumbs thinking, I did it, I'm finished, what do I do now? So there's always something else to do, okay? What I am gonna do, because we don't have time to do this now, it's like 9:15, and we wouldn't have time to finish it right now. What I'm gonna do is assign this as a homework, to kind of take home, to give you some practice. The one thing that I see all the time, now this is an entry-level class, being that it's entry level, some people come in and they just want to be able to talk HTML and CSS. They're like, that's all I want to do. Like, I don't really care to build anything. Other people care to build things, right? In the end, you have a final project that you have to come up here and demonstrate. You have to show, you have to stand right where I am and show your work, which means if you do not understand how to do this, in a week from now, 2 weeks from now, when you start designing it, you're going to struggle big time. That if you do not practice every day a little bit, 15 minutes a day, 3 times a day, 5-minute intervals, just go and do it. This stuff is just going to go away. It's not stuff that just sticks in your brain. And when we get to JavaScript is even harder to like retain. It's the kind of material that you have to practice every day. I usually don't give like a homework assignment to do on a Tuesday. I usually give it to Thursday and you have the weekend to do it. This would have just been a lab, and in all honesty, would have taken you 15 minutes to really build that nav. That's what I'm gonna ask you to do for homework. Just to build out this particular nav. So again, I'll slack it out. There we go. That's going to be the homework. Okay, I'm gonna add it to our homework tab here. I have the homework. I'm gonna say do. I had you just continue working on relaxer, but you can either continue to work on it or not. So I'm just going to put here build out nav, put the link there. Okay. The other things that I added, just for reading, right? You're sitting, how many people commute? You're in the city, unless you live in the city. Even here, you still got to commute someplace. Hey, open up this article and read it. And this says it's 24 minutes, so maybe not read the whole thing, just try to browse through it. And then there's another way, implement the wrapper. We looked at this. I'm just kind of showing it again. This is the article that I gave the other day. I'm just giving it again. If you want to read it, you read it, right? So these are like the do's. Do this. Definitely build out this. Try to continue working on relaxer. If you didn't complete it, look at somebody else's, and then just start reading this HTML5 semantic elements, because we're going to be covering semantic elements. So I'm just trying to get you prepared for it. I know Brian was like posting the homework in the Slack channel. I don't do that. The tab is here. Like everyone has access to the Trello board. If you do not, then reach out. Isaiah, if you don't, you reach out. Slack me if you don't. I add you to the Trello board, but this is what I use. Outside of me slacking individual code pins out, I'm not going to be like slacking the homework. It's here. Go to it. Okay. You can always take a look at the homework. I will add the recording to class, and I will put it here. Okay. I don't know if Brian was recording. Was he recording stuff? He did? Cool. So then you have the recordings. I will add my recordings here, just like he did, and you'll be able to see it by tomorrow. It's got to process on my computer. Okay? So what I am going to ask now, since it is like 9:16, why don't we fill out the exit tickets? You have the exit ticket. Fill out the exit ticket. And once again, I'm going to read the feedback. Next class, we'll be jumping into a review of that nav, finish up with the block level element nav. We'll jump into new content. Try hitting me up with questions in the exit tickets. Oh, I just slacked it out. Oh, it's not in the. It's not in here. Yeah. If it's not in this, you can always go to the previous ones. It's the same exit ticket. We're just kind of reusing it. So I'm going to copy it. Sorry about that. Hard. I'm just going to move it over here. I'm still going to be here for a few more minutes, so if you finish with your exiting and you wanted to ask me a question, show me something, show me your code pen, I can take a look at it. And Isaiah, I need you to the Trello board, right? Right. Shoot me your email address, and I'll add you. Now. Let me see. Do I have you in here? Oh, so you did this manually versus the one that I slacked out?
Yeah, because I was trying to
just
see how it worked, and then I was trying to compare the two, and for some reason I just couldn't find the issue between either your CSS or HTML or mine.
So yours is, can you Slack it to me? And if I, mind if I pull it up?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Let's pull this up. What I think is happening is this. And depending on where we put this, right? So you put it here. Now remember the header. Now I'm going to just investigate what's going on. Right? So I'm going to go here. If I investigate what's happening, what's the green mean there? What's the green represent?
Just for the images, or just the rest of the body?
This green over here as part of the box
that's
model.
the padding.
Yeah. So the header has 300 pixels padding. Anything inside of the header gets pushed down.
Okay.
So you know what I'm saying? So at that point in time, based on this design,
I would have to physically give it the padding that I wanted it to have.
Exactly. Or you would take this out of the header and put it above the header. See, and then it's above the header. But now the issue is
it has that white space up there.
That's because the background image is applied to the header.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden it requires a redesign.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? At this point in time, we'd have to say, well, if that's the case, then maybe, maybe this. If we went back to your design, right, and we're like, all right, here we go. If I went to the CSS and I was just like, all right, let's just maybe stop. I'm going to do this. I'm going to fork yours. And this is what I like to do just to play around. I'm going to change the view and go to full page. Because seeing this thing on the side just drives me crazy. So now I'm here in this full page, right? I'm going to go to developer tools. Let's highlight this. Let's go to the header and let's get rid of this padding tab. Right. That's kind of where we wanted to go, right? Awesome. If this is what we want to do, then we have to use now, on the wrapper, we would have to use margin top. Do you see how it changes our design now? How we design it one way, and the minute you start adding other elements, it requires that you're probably going to have to refactor. That's why this design, like when you do this, you draw it out so you know exactly what you're trying to do.
Okay.
When you start adding other things, you're like, oh snap, this changed everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which that did happen. I was doing a relaxer page and I had to go back.
Yeah.
I messaged you a question. And I was just like, this is not working out.
Oh, did you? I didn't see the
You had
question.
2 different Slack profiles.
Oh, yes. I try to remove the other one.
Yeah.
So the other one, if I don't respond to it, that means I didn't get it because I will
figured
respond
it out
to it.
eventually, and it was a problem with the padding that I had on one of the elements. So I just had to go back and redo that. But okay, it makes more sense.
Cool.
Thank
All
you.
right, you got it? Yeah, no problem. What's up?
I'm still like a little unsure how you remove this staff.
Push this down?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that we have a padding.
Oh, just give me 1 second. You want to put your laptop down? Can you Slack it to me and I'll pull it up? Just makes it easier to see on the screen. I'm going to add you right now.
You know, that last thing you did, I missed that part. You moved the letters because my letters are stuck right here.
Oh, okay. So what I had sent out, right? This thing that I had sent out here originally for you guys to work on, like this, was another custom version. And so if I was to take a look at this version, I would see that I had used margin top to push this thing down versus the padding on the header. So this is a different version than the one that we built. Okay?
Because I was like, I couldn't get it to go up too.
Yeah.
The blue letters are just still right here.
So that's what, God, I'm just working.
Isn't to say I'm sorry, it's a few minutes late today.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I just started a new job and like totally miscalculated how long it would take me to put me over here. So
Okay, that's cool.
Well, thank you. Class is wonderful.
Okay.
See you
Thursday. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the same thing that I was just dealing with this one right here. It's the same concept,
that's the
right?
same thing. It was like,
Yeah. So what you want to do is, once again, always go to developer tools and investigate. If you investigate, the thing that we did here was to remove on the wrapper, let me just refresh. And you're going to see it, you go, it's down here. So what happens is the padding is pushing it down. So now you have to remove the padding so it goes up and put margin on this to push it down. Just give that a shot.
The margin
On the wrapper.
on the wrapper.
Because the wrapper now, we need to re-edit this if we want to use the design that we put versus the one that I slacked out. They're two different. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, did you slack it to me?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So here we go. What's going on?
So if you wanted to move this box.
Yep.
If you want to move it, I'm still unclear how you would move it.
Okay. Oh, so if you want to move it to the right?
Or up and down, because it was originally all the way up on the page.
Okay, so first place is we go to developer tools.
Okay.
And in developer tools, I would see that padding on the header is what's pushing it down and pushing it left.
Where do we see it?
This green, as part of the box model, represents padding. And if you went to the computer tab, let me go to the computer tab while I have this highlighted. The computer tab shows the box model. And so that green is padding. Margin would be orange, and border would just be the black line. So what you have here is padding is what's pushing it down and pushing it to the left. So if we wanted to raise it, what we would do is if I went to styles and here's padding left or padding top, if I change this and I scroll up, look, I'm moving it up. I'm lessening the padding top on the header, which is bringing up the elements to come back up.
Okay.
Make sense?
Since we don't have padding bottom and, padding right and
Yep.
bottom, so what does it do?
Oh, that just means that there's nothing over here to push against it.
Oh.
We're just using padding to kind of push this over and push it down. That's all we're doing. Since
Okay.
the content is inside of it, that's kind of how we want to do it, right? The content lives inside, so let's use padding to move the thing around inside of the container, since it's not the container trying to push away from other elements. The container isn't pushing away from other elements, it's like pushing away from its parent. And we already saw that margin, trying to do that without having 1 pixel padding or border, the margin bleeds right out. So we decided to use padding to overcome that issue.
Okay,
And so we can use it to move up and down, left and right.
okay.
But always investigate it in developer tools so you can see it. I just need everyone to kind of get in the feeling of like looking at developer tools.
How do you get rid of the developer?
Oh, you just X out of it. Here?
Oh.
Just X.
Oh, okay. So you just do it to look at it, see.
Yeah, that's it. Because what you're bringing to me is something like, I don't know what your settings are. I mean, I could look through your CSS, or I could visually see it here in front of me. And by going to developer tools, right, and seeing the thing, I could tell you in a second that it's padding.
Mhm.
Like, I see it.
It's hard to understand the padding because you think the padding is, it's like in the box, in the container, right?
Yeah.
But if you're saying the green is the padding.
Yeah, and the green is inside of the header. The green is pushing the space down between.
Okay.
It's pushing this box from the top down.
Okay, so where are the margins?
We're not using margins here.
Oh,
Like, we removed the margins
right.
earlier here.
Okay. Because I guess I thought the padding was like let's say if we're looking at the box,
Mhm.
so I thought padding was like inside the box.
Oh, it is inside the box.
Okay.
So remember, everything here is a box. This is the box, the header is a box, and so the same concept that we use padding here to create space,
Mhm.
we're using padding, just more of it to create space.
Okay.
That's all we're doing. Padding is meant to kind of like create space within something, and margin is when I want to push away. 2 elements are trying to push away from each other.
Okay.
That's when you would use it.
So there would be padding in this box.
In this box.
And this box too.
Yep, that's what we did.
Okay. So we're changing the padding in the bigger box.
Yeah, so padding in the bigger box is what you had, and then if you add padding in this box, it'll create the distance around the inside, and it creates the space.
Okay.
Once again, we could use margin on these things to push away from each other, but that's like extra margins that we don't need when I just want to create a space within the box to just push everything away from the edges of the box. That's all we're trying to do.
So to move this around, you affect the padding inside here.
Yes,
Okay.
I would affect the